Good evening. Welcome everyone to our regularly scheduled board meeting this evening. Happy to see some folks in the audience and our student representatives up here. Trustee Roger is joining us via Zoom this evening. The meeting is, we do have a translator here this evening, so if there is anyone here who would benefit from the Spanish translation, please notice on your Zoom screen that there is a small circle at the bottom. Press that and you will then have the ability to hear the translator. And we will now have that translated for us.
Buenas noches, bienvenidos a todos y a esta reunión del Consejo del Distrito Escolar de San Luis Obispo. Vamos a estar, tenemos intérpretes de español, de inglés al español para las personas que necesitan este servicio. Por favor, ustedes vean en la parte de su pantalla al final, opriman el globo y eso nos hará saber que ustedes necesitan acceso a la interpretación en español. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. All right, the board, sorry, could we get rid of the got it message on the large screens, please? Yeah. Thank you. The board met in closed session immediately prior to gathering an open session, and the items discussed were 4.01, anticipated litigation, 3 cases, and 4.02, conference with real property negotiators. The property was Morrow Elementary, and our negotiator was Harold Freeman of Lozano Smith, and the parties include as the school district, SLCUSD, and the city of Morro Bay. All right. Do we have consensus on the order of business this evening? Everyone good? Mrs. Roger, you okay? Okay, thank you. We will move on to our student representatives to the board, and you CL Smith guys back there, pay close attention. This could be you one of these days. All right. And who has won the coin toss this evening? All right. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Colton Franklin. I am co-president of ASB at Morro Bay High, along with my other co-president, Ruby Scott. And we just wanted to give you an update on the things happening at Morro Bay High School lately. First off, we're going to start with sports because who doesn't love some good high school competition? Boys water polo won their first ever playoff game in program history. So successful season on our part. Pat on the back. Next up, girls water polo. Our aquatics program is on a roll this year. They are seeded #1 in Central Section Division 2, and they compete in the 3rd round versus Tulare Western tomorrow at 6. So if you guys want to come out and watch a very competitive game of girls water polo, come out to Morro Bay High. Also, football won their opening game and now hosts round 2 on Thursday night at 7 p.m. And along with girls cross country, they won league in Santa Maria and the boys took 2nd place. I went out to that race. It was super awesome. We had both boys and girls top finishers were from Morro Bay High School. So Morro Bay High representing well in the Ocean League for cross country. And last Sunday at the Pismo Pier, our surf team competed in their 2nd contest of the season. We competed against Ventura's B team and we won 47-11 and are currently 2-0. It's kind of hard to be bad at surfing when your campus is 50 feet away from the ocean. So we lived up to our expectations. And we had winter sports tryouts that wrapped up last week and competitions begin next week. So we're moving into the new season, some new sports coming to our campus. And last night was our winter sports parent info night, and we specified of our safe sports policy and shared that as a centerpiece. And next up is Ruby Scott.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ruby, and I'm going to report on just some other things that are happening at Morro Bay besides sports. This past weekend, our FFA program put on the Aggie Backer bar dance, which was a huge success. And just yesterday, you can see on the slide, 15 of our students returned from a science field trip to Santa Cruz Island, which is the biggest island of the Channel Islands chain, near Ventura and Santa Barbara. And I was able to return to this trip as a TA after our trip during the spring and continue the study that we started. Students were able to participate in fieldwork and collect data for research that will aid the Nature Conservancy in efforts to preserving native plant species among this protected island. It was a super amazing experience. All the students that got to come had to not sadly, but we're all sad to leave and return to school. It was a super awesome opportunity that we all got to participate through. And then moving on, Dia de los Muertos, last week, ethnic studies and Spanish 3 classes collaborated in making an altar, an ofrenda, and adding leaves to the tree of life. Each leaf represented a thought to someone or an animal that passed. And finally, our theme for the playoff football game round 2, which is this Thursday, like Colton said, will be patriotic themed, and ASB will be selling red, white, and blue sunglasses, which benefits from those will be donated to a local organization called Operation Surf, which benefits veterans through the act of surfing, because it's a fun activity that can be kind of stress relieving for some people. And that's all we have for today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to interject that several years ago, the first year of the surfing, Mrs. Roger and I attended a tournament. I don't know if you remember that, Marilyn, and we really didn't know much of how the scoring worked or what was going on, but it really looked like everyone was having a great time. So we're glad to see that program is progressing and still has lots of enthusiastic participation. All right. And what's going on at San Luis Obispo?
I am Taya Kalpakov. I am ASB Vice President, as our president is currently at volleyball state first round. So this is SLO High School's report. So we also had a Dia de los Muertos. We had the ofrenda. We had a very similar thing where everyone put, ours was little butterflies that we put up where we had names or notes to loved ones or past pets. Our culinary classes all made sugar skulls, which we also had out. We had photos of unfortunately past students. And we had it running all day, morning and at lunch and at break, and lots of different people showed up and passed through, and Mecha Club and ASB were the main ones to put it on. This Monday, so this is finals week for us actually, as we are on the trimester schedule. So this Monday we had the Study with Your Buddies, which is from 6 to 9. We had hot chocolate and snacks and just helping everyone prepare. Some teachers were there to help kids study and answer some last minute questions. And Mr. Stewart, the ASB teacher, was very proud to report we didn't have any leftover food, which never happens. So we had a full attendance and we were very excited how it turned out, as this is the first time we're bringing it back. As I said, our athletics are doing wonderfully. Volleyball was the runner-up for Division I CIF, and that their first state game right now for Division I for SoCal. Water polo won league and is heading into their second round of CIF tonight. Girls tennis has been killing it all season, and they're facing the Division I CIF championship match today. Good luck to them. And cross country just won league per usual. I believe it was the girls' 5th season in 6 years of winning league, and the boys' 6th in a row or something like that. And they're attending the CIF championship on November 16th. And we just got our new merch. We have been waiting impatiently for our merch to finally arrive. And Bryce Jenkins, our commissioner of merchandise, is finally organizing and getting everything ready to sell. We are selling sweatshirts for $40 and crew necks for $35, as that is the current price. And reports from those that were trying it on, they were very excited, and they're always a big hit. So we will start selling those in our merch store very soon. We have a canned food drive. It's a tradition for us to have the canned food drive the week before Thanksgiving break, and our commissioners of sustainability and community relations are putting it on. So this is to help cover Thanksgiving dinners, as our local homeless shelters like to put on a Thanksgiving meal, like a proper Thanksgiving meal for our local homeless population. And so we have specialty items, which we emphasize for our students to bring in. So those are worth 5 points, while any normal canned food item is 1 point. And then grades do a battle, and the one that wins the spirit points. So from the week of November 13th to 17th, we will have cans out in the front of the school if any of you are in town and would like to drop off some canned food items. And last thing is we have our intramural futsal game. We have 11 teams, which is a pretty good turnout. Our commissioners of lunchtime activities will have, this is their second intramural so far this year. We're emphasizing advertising the teams at the beginning of the competition, so we get more teams to show up and recognize they're pretty cool just for participating, even if they don't win. And so we're working on our brackets and maybe another staff team win, as the staff team did win the last intramural of dodgeball. And that is all I have for you.
Thank you. As always, we really appreciate your coming and sharing with us the great things that are going on at your schools. It's wonderful to hear. And I know that several of us attend events as we can, and we appreciate it. Mr. Clausen.
I was wondering how I would access the merch store.
The merch store is adjacent to our ASB room. It's right inside our ASB room. We used to have it open at lunch Tuesday, Thursdays, but if you email Mr. Stewart or go to Susie Locke at the front in our ASB office in the main office, you can definitely get some merch through there. Yeah. It's very comfortable. Highly recommend.
Do you think it's possible for us to order things online? Or do we need to go, which is fine, just
think the
asking.
Best
If we knew someone in ASB, could they?
Could they fix us
they
up?
can, yes. Yeah, students can't buy for students because you have to put it under the right name, but
Okay.
students can definitely buy for adults.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yes.
Thanks very much. All right, we appreciate it as always. We know that especially San Luis High, you're headed into finals week. This is a big deal. And Morro Bay, we understand that you have other commitments besides just us. So we understand if you need to head on out, but we always appreciate hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you. All right. Now it's time for our school highlights of the evening. CL Smith. Welcome, welcome. Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us tonight. We really appreciate being here. As always, I know that you would rather hear from our amazing superstars. So I have 2 of our 6th graders that are also our student senators, and they're here to share what they have been feeling. We've been doing such a wonderful job at CL Smith, and they're here to share. So I have Mackenzie Foster and Leonidas Castillo.
We continue our implementation of Leader in Me, our social/emotional education. This year, we have started a Genius Hour, which is every Friday afternoon. This community building activities includes us meeting with our buddy classes every time. 6th graders are buddies with 3rd graders, 5th grade is buddies with 2nd grade, and 4th graders with 1st. Our buddies will remain the same throughout the school year. The weekly Friday rotation includes an extended Leader in Me lesson, 2 weeks of STEAM classes, and our school-wide awards assembly. Each month, we rotate to a new teacher so we can get 7 different STEAM experiences and an opportunity to get to know many more staff members on the campus throughout the year. Our Student Lighthouse team meets weekly to discuss ways to make our school a better place. We've split up into action teams to divide up the work. Students are taking charge of what is helping on campus, such as assemblies, morning announcements, new student tours, recycling, and waste Green Waste, and Peace Patrol.
We continue our elementary athletics where we had girls volleyball, boys soccer, and co-ed cross country this fall. Our students have been loving the competition across school sites. Coming up is girls soccer and boys basketball. This past month we had our Be Unique week, which included the understanding of people who have unique abilities and hardships. We held simulations to learn how it can be difficult for some of our students on campus. For example, in sixth grade, we learned about dyslexia and dyscalculia and attempted to read passages where letters and numbers were rearranged to demonstrate the difficulty in speed and comprehension. We concluded our week with an assembly to share out what we had learned and had a guest speaker share his history of growing up blind throughout his life.
After School Math Academy. We have started our After School Math Academy to support our 4th through 6th grade students with math skills, especially working on multiplying and dividing multi-digit numbers. They meet with a credentialed teacher twice a week in small groups for extra support.
We are really proud of all that our school is offering to make people feel included and seen. We look forward to seeing the outcomes throughout this year.
Thank you. We welcome you, superstars. Thank you so much for sharing the interesting and beneficial things occurring at your school. Thank you very much. Any questions from the board? Mr. Clausen, then Mr. Unger.
I just want to say, Mackenzie and Leonidas, you did a really nice job representing your school. Really good job.
Mr. Unger.
One of the things that I'm learning about is a lot of the schools are focusing on Leader in Me. Can you talk to me just a little bit about what you've gotten out of Leader in Me, what it means to you?
Well, what Leader in Me means to me is like showing how to express ourselves through different things, like putting first things first, like the first to third habit, it's talking about yourself and how you worry about yourself before you worry about someone else to help someone else. And the rest is basically how to work as a team, like listen first to understand, then to be understood. Like if a teacher's talking and you're not listening, you're not going to know what to do. But if you're listening to the speaker, you would know what to do. And we have a new habit. It's the 8th habit. It's finding your voice. Some students at our school probably don't know how to show that yet. And doing our assemblies and our morning announcements and our Lighthouse leadership team is probably helping them a lot more to finding their voice.
Thank you. Thank you
Good
very much.
description. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Right. Again, thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming and sharing with us this evening.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, this is 7.01 correspondence, and at the time the agenda was prepared, we had no correspondence. Next is public comment, and at this time I would invite anyone from the public who wishes to address the board on a topic not on the agenda, but within the purview of the board to address us. You have 3 minutes to do so. We have a timer and we'll keep track of your time. If there's something later on the agenda that you'd like to wait for that topic, then I would suggest you do so unless you are feeling that you prefer not to wait that long and wish to address this now. So it looks like at this time I see that Michael Lowe followed by Jackie Lowe would like to address the board. And we're going to put up a timer, which I can't see. Is it up? Okay, hold on just one moment, please. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Lowe, and I have 2 students in the district. I'd like to address the board regarding policy 0415 on equity. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on equity, but I do have a graduate degree in public administration. And for work, I help develop, implement, and enforce state and local policies in my role as chief building official for the city of SLO. The equity policy states that the board and the superintendent or designee shall develop and implement policies and strategies to promote equity in the district, programs, and activities through measures such as the following. These words, such as, weakens this policy by making the 9 measures in the policy merely recommendations. My wife will use the rest of my time to help you see how this policy has already been ineffective in eliminating barriers.
Okay, you will have your own 3 minutes. We don't share
Okay,
time, so we'll
that's
start
fine.
the timer again.
Okay. Am I good? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Good evening. I introduced myself to this board on October 17th. On October 20th, it came to my attention that an email was sent out by the Home Office soliciting a site representative for a district equity leadership team that would be meeting quarterly this year. I was thankful and encouraged by this news. However, when I reached out to Dan Block about participating on this team again, I was denied access. I was told that my participation does not fit with the new direction that is being taken with the team. From the list of representatives I was provided, it was clear that the community is intentionally not being included. And this decision violates board policy BP 1220, which indicates that advisory committees should, to the extent possible, include representation from all affected parties. The intentional decision to leave out community stakeholders is contrary to this board's vision, mission, and guiding principles. The irony is not lost on me when I consider the barriers I've experienced in trying to participate in equity work in this district. I offer high quality training in data analysis, and I am part of the inclusion and belonging cohort. On top of the perspective that I offer as a first-generation biracial woman in the community, I also offer a research-based equity lens. I had hoped that the district had the capacity and discernment to view me as an ally and as a free community resource. As a community member and a parent, I'm concerned about patterns of communication that I have personally experienced. It might not be the intention of the Home Office, but I'm here to communicate that I do not feel authentically included or invited to participate in my community's educational program, as I have been repeatedly denied access to contribute to the equity team's work. I ask the board if this is the intention of the district to exclude and block off participation and engagement. Equity work is complex. It involves the changing of hearts and dispositions as well as policies and practices, and I invite the board to explore how power is consciously understood and wielded throughout this organization. I ask the board to consider how trust is being created and nurtured while also excavating the power imbalances that leave many minoritized students and families feeling voiceless and unrepresented. As our district prepares to continue their equity work, I intend on coming to each board meeting to share research on varying factors around equity work and education. It seems that this is the only way I will be able to participate and engage in the educational program that is in my community. And so today I'd like to present specific behaviors that provide opportunities to drive cultural responsiveness within schools. The first is a critical self-awareness, which focuses on the need to interrogate ways that leaders and their organizations contribute to, reproduce, or contest oppressive practices in schools. The second behavior is the support of culturally responsive curriculum and teacher development in order to improve the learning and humanization of minoritized students. The third behavior focuses on school climate and spaces and how they influence disparities in educational outcomes. And the fourth behavior
Thank you
involves
very much.
Okay.
Thank you. And you are welcome to email us or pass out information if you wish to
I have it
distribute
here.
things. So, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Is there?
Would you like the information now?
You can leave it there. We'll make sure that it's distributed to the board. Thank you. Is there anyone else who is present in the room wishing to address the board at this time? Right, anyone online, Ms. Dawson? All right, thank you very much. All right, we will move on to our superintendent updates, please. 8.01, business and budget. Mr. Pinkerton.
Yeah, we had a few of the board members and myself had the opportunity to go to the economic forecast on Friday. Very well put on event, a lot of great speakers there. It was interesting, from a just nutshell view was that the economy looks like it's still going at a good pace. Really what it boiled down to, the biggest kind of dilemma for the Central Coast anyways, was just housing and affordable housing. So we're running into a situation where we don't have enough employees at some of our lower level positions. And so a lot of those people that would normally take those positions with us are having to leave the area, right, because of the cost of housing. So really the push for the three speakers that were there was really more multi-family housing units and really more opportunity for people to have housing in the area. You might have seen in the paper today, Diablo Canyon put in to increase their current license with the federal government, right, for 20 years. So we'll see where that goes and what happens with it. So I think they have 2 months, a month, 2 months to kind of hear back from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And as it stands, what effect that will have on property taxes, those types of things for the school district remains to be seen. We did have a fire behind San Luis Obispo High School last week. And so that was kudos to CAL FIRE, to the fire department here locally, to law enforcement for helping and really getting that under control. I mean, they really, for our neighbors here around the school itself, I think they did a pretty miraculous job of getting that fire under control. I think I saw about 12 planes drop retardant around the fire, kind of cut it off, but they were up in the neighborhood above the Taylor Field, as well as on the campus. And so again, just kudos and thanks to them. We have had some after action kind of conversations, just so the board knows, right? Kind of speaking with the staff, speaking with administration, what went well, what didn't go well. And those are things that we'll continue to refine as we go through some of these exercises, right? For the most part, they're normally not real exercises that we do. And so this was a real opportunity to kind of talk about what happened, what was good, what was bad. It also, just so the board knows, it also kicked in the local EOC, so the Emergency Operations Center here locally for the city of San Luis Obispo. And that did work well. So I was in communication with them. We were talking, talked about the facility, talked about needs, talked about the next day, electricity, power. And again, kudos to PG&E, honestly, because they actually brought in a generator that was the size of a diesel truck, which basically got the school back on the grid. So about a third of the school was still out of power due to the lines, as well as the district office. So again, kudos to them for getting that here, getting it set up, running it, and for a lot of communication. So, and then, definitely for SLO High administration, staff and kids, it's a bit chaotic when something like that happens, right? But again, nobody got hurt. Everybody was fine at the end, and at the end of the day, that's really what matters, right? Is that all was kind of well as we move forward. So again, we'll continue to learn from this experience, and we actually have a district wide with all of the administrators, all the district office staff are going to have a emergency training in February. So kind of reunification, what would we do as a district team? So these are things that we continue to do with our safety. Thank you.
Right, next, educational services. Ms. Yamashita.
All right. Good evening, board. I wanted to start by celebrating our secondary teaching staff. With the help of Mr. O'Connor and the secondary ISLA team, had a fantastic professional development training day on Friday with Dr. McDowell. We've also been busy beginning outlining the planning for our LCAP process, and we'll be coming to you here in a few weeks to share how we plan to develop that for the next 3-year LCAP plan, seeking feedback from community, looking at data, trying to research best practices, etc. I've had the opportunity to have a lot of fun doing some site visits since I saw you last. I visited Teach Elementary, C.L. Smith Elementary. I was excited and wanted to share that when I was there a couple days ago, I got to observe what was the first Leader in Me weekly video message of the two leaders. What's it called? Morning announcements. And I saw first grade class watching the big sixth graders get to watch the morning announcements. It was fantastic. I've been having, as you know, several meetings with several of you to talk about questions and comments regarding the school plans and DLI instruction and all sorts of fun stuff. I was able to record the podcast about innovation and AI with Christine Robertson and Jeremy Kalish, and that'll be coming out on our website very soon. If anyone here in the audience would like to see and learn more about what we're doing in San Luis Coastal about that. We've also been planning for, and I innovate for secondary schools expansion specifically into middle school and what that programming would look like next school year and beyond. And I've been collaborating with our local districts and other educational leadership teams with SLCUSD, the County Office of Education, and working with Janet Gould and our team regarding our direct assistance and continuous improvement monitoring related to our suspension rate of disproportionality for students with disabilities, as well as our chronic absenteeism. And those are two focuses we've been working on kind of across the year, and we already have data to suggest we're making improvements, but that's going to be an ongoing conversation and process this school year. And we had a couple of fantastic principal leadership meetings that Stephanie Shepard and Mr. O'Connor led, one regarding how to do better, stronger investigations with students, also how to follow our threat assessment procedures. And we've been working on the ELA adoption planning. So super busy in educational services.
Thank you. And now back to Mr. Pinkerton for our bond measures.
Yeah, so we have a couple of lease-leaseback agreements for the board to approve tonight. We received our lease-leaseback agreement on Monday for Los Osos Middle School, and we'll receive our last bid for Laguna Middle School next Monday. So we'll be bringing those forward to the board very, very soon. So still pleased with the outcome, still pleased with local contractors getting the work and receiving really good bids, which again, end of the day will allow us to do more projects, right, as we move forward. I have set up site meetings with all of the schools affected by Measure C coming up. So the 8 elementary schools, the middle schools, and we've already talked Pac Beach, but to go to attend a staff meeting at each of those sites, talk about the bond, what's happening, what's coming for them, right? What the site plan, just making sure that the staff is aware of what's happening, right? Continuing to share that information with principals who can share it with parents and as we go. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years as we move forward. Some sites are well equipped to have, they have extra classrooms already on campus, and then there's other sites where it's going to be a tight fit, right? When you take into consideration childcare and programs, and so we're currently working on some of that temporary housing options as well. And I look forward to sharing that information with the board at our upcoming study session.
Thank you. All right. Next is item 9.01, resolution regarding our developer fee report and 5-year developer fee findings. Mr. Pinkerton.
Yeah, so annually, we bring this item to the board for approval. I'm gonna pull it up, share my screen. As part of this process, we actually included this item at our last board meeting as an informational item. So you're supposed to make this developer fee report and 5-year plan, public, right? Is for public viewing prior to tonight's meeting for hopeful adoption. So developer fees are paid when somebody builds a home. Residential, there's a fee. And then if it's a business, it's actually a separate fee, right? And so that's kind of laid out in this developer fee resolution. And again, this talks about all the things that we have to have this first part, the resolution itself, all the things that have to be part of it. And I'm going to skip right down to the actual kind of nuts and bolts, the meat of this report. Okay, so again, residential, $379 per square foot. We actually, it's been several years since the board has actually increased the developer fee. There's been a few chances for us to do that in the past, and maybe something in the future that we bring forward, but we have not done that. It's been quite a while. 2018 and 61 cents per square foot for commercial and industrial development. We have had a lot of building in the past 5 years, in particular in the city of San Luis Obispo. And so what that has meant to the district in terms of funding, we had a beginning balance of a little over $1 million in that fund. Revenues for last school year, 22-23, was $2,631,000. What I will tell you is almost all of those funds went to San Luis Obispo High School and to projects there. So that's again, these funds have to go to schools that are seeing increased enrollment. And so San Luis Obispo High School would be that site. And so this has helped supplement our Measure D funds. Developer fees aren't enough to do gigantic projects and do a lot of things, but it has been nice to have those funds to supplement the Measure D funds, in particular at SLO High. And so, for example, out of the 100 school building, the main building on campus, developer fees funded about 21% of that project over the course of the years leading up to now. In terms of the capital facility fund, again, you kind of see the breakdown, beginning balance, what we received in residential, commercial, much less. Some interest earned on those dollars, refunds, people that ended up not building, so we refunded the money to them. And then again, the expenditures, basically just the one site put towards those, leaves us with an ending balance of $211,000. I would anticipate that we're going to receive probably about the same, anywhere between $2 and $3 million over the next year in developer fees. As we move forward, we'll see if it goes down, how development runs, but there's been a lot of development in terms of, again, in particular, the city of San Luis Obispo and the county areas that are part of our school district. Really two things that I see kind of with these funds ongoing. One would be the continuation of San Luis Obispo classroom. So we have some portable classrooms on campus right now. Do we replace those? Do we put a new classroom building in their stead? So that'll be a conversation we'll have as we kind of move forward. But in particular, these dollars in the next 5 years with the 5-year plan would really help us with our Measure C projects, in particular with the addition of TK classrooms. So we're adding TK classrooms at all of our elementary sites, sans teach, right, except for teach. But the addition of those classrooms really needed. So bigger classrooms, 1,350 square foot, restrooms in the classrooms, those types of things. These are things that with the addition of the TK program throughout our school district are definitely needed facilities, right? And is really increasing enrollment at a few of our sites in particular that we're seeing. So we have C.L. Smith now, Pacheco, near 500, C.L. Smith over 500, Los Ranchos over 500. And those are, I'm not complaining, those are actually decent sized elementary schools, but nice to have these facilities to assist with that program, which of course is a great program for kids, right? And long-term is really a true intervention for all of our students in our school district, giving them an extra year of schooling before they start kindergarten. So that's, again, the nuts and bolts. Some of the other funding, of course, we continually look for any and all ways to receive state funding. So matching dollars, modernization funds. We'll see. We're kind of in the hopper. Again, just the Measure D projects. The state, we should be funded a little over $4 million in matching funds for that. We haven't received those yet, but should in the future, right? Again, we have our Measure C, thanks to our community for passing Measure C. So those general obligation bond funds, our state modernization funding, again, that was the $4 million I discussed, and potentially over the next 5 years, developer fees. So if we average $2 million a year, that'd be about $10 million altogether. And again, some of the other things kind of unknown, but we'll continue to move forward with trying to get as many as many state matching grants or funds that we can that go along in that direction. So tonight, I'm asking the board to approve the annual developer fee report, answer any questions that you might have. And what I've been doing with this is just updating the 5-year plan every year and just having that as part of the plan as we move forward. I really don't have to do that, but every 5 years, but doesn't hurt just to do it as we move forward.
Thank you. I'd like to go, this is an action item. I'd like to go to the public, see if anyone from the public has any comments or questions about the developer fees. All right. Then
It's a riveting board item, I'm sure.
Pardon me?
I said it's a riveting board item.
Yeah, all right. And
Yes.
then coming back to the board, Mr. Banfield and then Ms. Hinton.
Thanks for explaining it,
Yes.
because I was totally lost.
Mhm.
And this, great, this helped me out so much. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. Ms. Hinton?
I was getting ready to go.
Oh, we're not quite there yet. Mr. Unger.
You mentioned using the developer fees for the TK classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Would we only use those in areas where we saw student enrollment growth, or is TK considered student enrollment growth at all of our sites, even though those areas might not be otherwise generating students?
Yeah, I think we would utilize it, those schools that are fully impacted already with the classroom situation. So such as Los Ranchos, you know, where they're already they're using all of their classrooms between their classroom use, those types of things. So they need additional classrooms on those facilities. But you could also make the nexus of needing the 1,350 square foot rooms with restrooms, I think, as well at the other sites to accommodate this new growth, this new program.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
And what about Bellevue Santa Fe? Are they entitled to some of our developer fees as well? Assuming, because I mean, if they establish a TK program, for example.
I mean, I guess we could, right? That could be something that we look at in terms of moving forward.
Okay.
We could, yeah. There's no plan to at this particular moment in time, but we are utilizing Measure C funds,
Right. Yeah.
right? For that school, that campus, which is part of our bond measure.
I have a question. You mentioned the 21% that we used to develop for fees at the San Luis Obispo High School. Had it not been for those developer fees, is that funding that would have come out of the bond, out of Measure D?
So we utilized the interest on the funds that we had. We utilized developer fees, Measure D, the 177 million, state matching grants
So
that
it
we
goes in
received
the
for
pot,
CD funds. It
but-
was all the pots.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I'm just,
It's
that's the point I'm trying to make is that
we
that
maximized. Yeah.
that helps our bond measure money go further because
Yes.
as a result of receiving all these funding sources you
Yes.
mentioned, but
were
including
able-
the developer fees.
we were able to complete many more projects because of this funding helping the overall, you know, sum of money we had to do those projects throughout the district.
Yeah, thank you. All right, this is an action item. If I would appreciate your, Mr. Banfield and Mrs.
Well, I
Hinton.
was going to go ahead and move to approve.
Right. Okay, is that all right, Eve? I know you had your hand up too, but do you want a second?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Banfield and a second by Mrs. Hinton. Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Clausen.
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next is our approval of our 2023-2024 single plans for student achievement. What a project.
There we are. Good evening, board. Tonight, we are going to begin with the elementary single plans for student achievement. And I have with me this evening Principal Black from CL Smith once more to speak on behalf of the process that his team has gone through involving many stakeholders. But before he comes on, what I want to state is that all of the elementary schools are really grounded and rooted within a continuous improvement process where we are looking at data, we're involving multiple stakeholders and perspectives before we then determine those key and strategic action steps that are going to improve our student performance across sites. And we continue to go through that over and over and over again throughout the school year and each year before we develop this plan. And it really serves as a roadmap and a guide. As you can see, they're quite comprehensive. Hopefully within the action steps and within the plans themselves, it's easy to see that through line of the board's strategic priorities, as well as the 3 goals and the focus areas for the district that are listed within the LCAP. And those are highlighted in yellow as well. And that is how we organize the document and all of the action items. And with that, I'll turn it over to Principal Black.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Shepherd asked me to do a brief presentation on the SPSA, so the single plan for student achievement. Just real quick, am I able to flip through this? There we go. Just what is the SPSA? Kind of talk a little bit about our developing of ours at our school site, and then also just give a little example of the new cover sheet. That'll be a part of it that kind of highlights some of our goal areas and focus areas for our school site. First off, it's a living document that is co-created through all our different stakeholders, parents, staff, leadership teams, students, getting feedback from them as well of what we're trying to move forward to. Everything is data driven, so we're looking at all of our results from the year prior and moving through that. It is broken down into the 3 focus areas that the board has presented for our goals. Substantial academic growth for all students, for our subgroup students, and then also the intentional culture of care. In the document itself, it allows us to allocate the different fundings from our general funds, from our Title I funds, and marking where our funding is going to be represented toward our different focus areas and our desired outcomes. What our process is that I've been doing the last 6 years, usually in the springtime, coming up in a couple months, my leadership team will start to identify where our focus areas will be for the next following year. Start those conversations going on, working with our school site council, getting feedback from the parents that way. Then through spring and the fall, working through all our different parent groups and our staff groups, just getting feedback of, obviously where do we want to go, how are we going to get there, and what are we going to put our focus toward. And then in the fall, in October, it's approved through our school site council. It's also run by our ELAC groups and our PTAs, shared through. We kind of skim through it. It's a large document, but we kind of hit the highlights of what our school is focusing on and what we're working through. And then the final thing is just an example of the new title page. This is our front page now this year, which makes it kind of cleaner for people to kind of get an idea of what our focus areas are going to be, our goals for ourselves, and what are some celebrations from the year prior, and obviously our mission statement at our school site. So very simple. It's a big document, takes a lot of time to work through, but we do try to take as much feedback in from all our different stakeholders in our school communities. Any questions or more questions?
And so as you're working this year with the plan designated for 23-24, I understand you're starting to look forward to the school year 24-25. Is that what I heard?
Every spring. Oh yeah.
Every spring you do that. That's quite a number.
Obviously, we have to utilize the data that we gather at the end of the year, but we do track throughout that document our data throughout our common assessments and our benchmarks. So we see our progress and where we're going. It's updated each trimester. But obviously, the end of the year, we get those more in the spring or in the summertime, most of our state scores and things like that. So that's the talking piece in the fall. But we always have our game plan of where we're heading as a school site starting in the spring.
How long has the district been doing this, the single plan?
6 years that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah, every year that we've been doing it.
Yeah, they started certainly before 2008. I was doing them in the state of California.
So when I was going through these, Mr. Block and I had some emails, but I just I just want to thank you for the presentation and for the work that's showing from CL Smith that's coming through in your report. It's really, really nice. I also did notice as I was going through, I made note, it looks like CL Smith's the only one that has an after-school mathematics program. Is that, I don't know if that's a district-wide thing that just didn't get reported, or is that just a special thing at CL Smith?
It's an intervention program that it's district, other school sites, I'm sure.
Other sites do. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll probably ask this of every school. What's being done about developing the speaking ability, public speaking ability, especially with Chat GPT, because that's a good way of determining mastery of a subject in light of a printed page we now know can come from any source, but the person mastering the subject matter is going to be very clear when they speak about it.
Sure, that's a great question. Obviously, state standards require speaking skills that are built within our different grade levels. So throughout different activities in the classrooms, through assignments, giving kids choice is a big part of how they're demonstrating their knowledge at our site, especially. And then obviously with our Leader in Me, it is what Mackenzie shared earlier, finding their voice. They are finding what they are good at and what they enjoy, and they're shining with that. So being able to be up in front of crowds, being up in front of panels, being up in front of those opportunities for Leader in Me, for our student lighthouse, they had to interview. So they had to fill out an application, and they had to go through interviews with 2 staff members, and it's a good skill for them to learn. So it's building, but definitely it is definitely part of the state standards that are represented in classrooms.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm going to interject briefly. We do have, our translator is interpreting for a couple of Spanish-speaking families tonight, and it has been requested that we keep that in mind when speaking, to perhaps slow down just a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
We good. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Trying to keep a list of who wants to speak here. So Mr. Clausen, then Mr. Unger.
I had a question, sorry.
So Mr. Black, you must return.
Well, so yeah, I'll make you come on back up. Well, so the parent feedback I've gotten is that, Mr. Black, you're particularly strong and adept at putting these support structures in place at CL Smith, and the culture and the programs there have been really positive. So I guess my question maybe is not for you specifically, but how consistent are we across campuses with this program? I know you spoke to CL Smith, so maybe Stephanie, this is for you. How do we ensure this is?
Are you asking how many Leader in Me schools we have across the
I'm just
district?
asking about this, the SPSA and how we're deploying it. And
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
okay, I mean, what do we see as the areas where there's differences and similarities in deployment? Like, is it consistently the same? Is it notably different based on principal, administration, and staff? Like, where?
I think you want me to go with that? Yeah. You know, it has everything in it for what the district offers, what the programs are, what the focus areas are for the entire district. But then we're able to add in what the site focuses are. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit different for each site and what their goals are and where they're trying to go to. You know, being a 6-year principal compared to a 2nd or 3rd year principal, there's different focus areas, right? So what our school wants to kind of gear toward and where we're trying to head for what our kids need, there are going to be some changes and differences, but for the most part, they're uniform. Yeah.
There is a little bit of allowance for some site autonomy, and that's based upon the school site councils and input from parent leaders, families that are coming in, as well as staff members. And it is ultimately the principal that's helping to guide and shape that with that input from all those stakeholders. So that process is unchanged throughout the school sites, but I imagine if you sat in on each school's school site council, that it would probably you would see some variation across school sites.
But you feel like the effectiveness of the approach is fairly consistent? And
I
there's
would
not-
say yes, because we're doing, there's so much nesting that occurs. I'm not sure if you're familiar with nesting goals, but because the board has provided such a clear and concise vision for us in terms of what our goal areas are, we've been able to establish fairly consistent guidelines for schools in terms of that alignment across school sites. So as you read through all 232 pages of the SPSAs, which many of you did an amazing job, and thank you for pointing out typos in a few for us so that we could clean them up and polish them. You probably saw some repetition throughout, and that's because of that alignment and that coherent vision that has been provided by the board.
Mr. Unger, then Mr. Buckman.
Yeah, I noticed that myself. One of the things that as I go through it, there are a lot of similarities, and I'm assuming those are things, especially those are things that are common throughout all of the SPSAs. Specifically things when I'm looking and I'm seeing this program, and it might say district provided, or it might say Mrs. Gould, or it might say Mr. Shepherd or something like that. I'm assuming those are things that are going to be fairly standard throughout the SPSAs. Where I see some differences, especially are, for example, in schools that have more Title I money, and how they apply the Title I money, for example, towards student needs and what they see are student needs based on the data that's been reported. So I think that's interesting. I was just going to comment. I think, I would say this too for the secondary. This is probably next to the LCAP, if the most important document that we have in the school district. In fact, it may be even more important than the LCAP because of its granularity. I think it's really interesting. I particularly like how the SPSAs looked at the board focus and the LCAP focuses and really put those at the center of the SPSAs. I love that there was really a strong focus on academics, really a strong focus on closing that achievement gap and starting with the data that we have and being able to actually see what those gaps look like and what those holes are and what we need to do. I think that was really important. I love that we're focusing on social emotional learning. You know, that we really, that was a completely separate section. I think that was section number 3. That was really important as well. And then the other thing I think that's important too is the increase in attendance, the focus on increasing attendance, because we know that that's an area that we're going to get called out on by the state. You know, I think some of our elementary schools are up above 20%, you know, and that's clearly important to us. And then I guess finally, really, especially for the elementary schools, I noticed this, we're looking at student engagement and how you can increase student engagement. I think that was really important. And I'm glad that people all recognized all of that. Just a great job, you guys. It really, it gives us something to ground ourselves in for next year and have those kind of conversations that we need to be able to have among our parents and our communities and our staff. So great job. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Buckman, but before you begin, please keep in mind our translators.
Okay.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
You should remind.
Well,
I totally spaced. I'm sorry.
Thanks. So again, I'm going to echo what Chris, this is an amazing amount of work. And when you look at it, you know, in totality, it's a lot of work that the whole district is focusing on. And Chris brought out some big topics, but so for me, as I read through it, I sort of started to look from this perspective and started to look for commonalities. So when staff gets this at the district office, besides like, yes, they did is there some point where you start to look for commonalities across all the schools? Or so I don't know, you know, in 5th grade, everybody starts wearing green sneakers. You know.
Are you talking about the action steps in particular? Or are you talking about the data itself?
Well, the data itself, because I think that's going to be really show some commonalities, but I didn't have the time to do it. So I don't know if that becomes part of the process for the district at that point.
It does, and we're starting to dive into that data and then thinking about at the very beginning stages of what the next LCAP is going to look like and how it will embody the work that yes is being done right now and those evidence-based pieces that we're seeing results that we want to continue that upward trajectory.
Pulling stuff out of this. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
there's a lot of alignment between our LCAPs and our SIPSs, and I'm sure that you could see that coherence across there.
And again, I think Chris was hitting on some that, so Chris was talking about the the high amount of absenteeism. And so I'm just wondering whether there's other pieces that you'll be pulling out as up here, because I know the sites have done a great job.
Yes,
But
and we
is there
are
stuff across the district that's going to come out of this that we'll see?
absolutely. So we actually at our elementary principal meeting today, we're continuing an ongoing conversation around tiered interventions and supports that are specific to absenteeism, and then aligning how do we respond when a student hits a certain number of absences, for example.
So let me just. So did anything else come out that looked like it was something across the district that you would be focusing on? I understand that absenteeism, but math scores in TK are plummeting. I don't know.
I think the other piece, and we're going to talk about CASP data next, so we can absolutely continue the conversation. But I think really continuing our forward momentum with the ELA adoption has become a continued focus.
Thanks.
Mr. Unger?
I'm thinking about what Mr. Buckman said, and I'll try to go a little bit slower.
Oh, I did it.
You mentioned, and we know that this year is the end of our 3-year LCAP cycle, and that we'll be developing a new LCAP beginning in 2024, or beginning actually 24, 25. Can you talk a little bit more about the learnings that we have from the SPSAs, and perhaps some of the stuff that you've used from the LCAP, and how that will inform the development of our new LCAP?
That's a great question, and we have an entire study session set aside coming up in the future months to discuss that.
Thank you. I have another.
Mr. Buckman?
I don't know if secondary is probably not even getting. So I noticed across the district that there's within section 3, there's this, we're going to review our parent involvement policy. And I didn't know whether that doesn't sound like a district level board policy. So I'm really interested in that. And I don't know if at some point there's, I need to just go track it down, or there's a Friday focus, or whether there's interest in a board agenda item. But I know I want to delve more into
Absolutely. Yeah, I can share it in this week's Friday focus, or if any of you are coming to tomorrow's DTAC meeting, we're going to be going over it at that point in time if you don't have anything to do tomorrow night.
So can you share that timing? Thanks. I appreciate it.
Right. I'm going to quickly add that I really appreciated the information from Youth Truth that was included. It showed great information. It's something I take a close look at for every site, and I wanted to give a shout out to Del Mar and to Pacheco, that their Youth Truth scores were really high, and it shows that their involvement with the community as a whole is good. I also wanted to thank, this is a little self-serving from many years ago, but I was on this school site council from kindergarten through management team at San Luis Obispo High School. The Superstars were my site team. I was on there for about 6 + 3, 9 years. And then the school site council at San Luis Obispo High School for about 7 years. And I really want to make sure that the staff and parents and who serve on those committees are aware of the work that they contribute to pulling all this information together and helping make those decisions on spending funds within their specific sites. And it's a big job, and I really appreciate all that goes into it. So just wanted to make sure that all the recognition is spread around. You guys get to stand up here and take credit for everything, but there are many moving parts behind the scenes. And on behalf of at least myself, I'd like to thank all those folks for their contributions. Okay, now we're. Yes. Oh, Mrs. Roger, I'm sorry, I kept looking up and didn't see your hand, and now there it is.
Hi, I'm here. I am very mindful of all the work that goes into the creation of these SPSAs. And I think we've been doing them since I came on the board in 2002. Mr. Unger perhaps could speak to that as well. We've been doing them for a long time. And when you read through them, there is quite a bit of redundancy. So I'm really grateful for the kind of cover page that was provided to us this year, because it gave some clarity, site-specific clarity, and it was really helpful to me. One of the things that I noticed, and I'm just going to pick these two schools for I mean, I'm not calling them out in any particular way, Aaron Black, but I did notice that funding related to the SPSAs is so significantly higher at Title I schools, which is acknowledgement of the greater need at Title I schools. So CL Smith, for example, receives between the general fund and Title I monies over $200,000 to implement their SPSAs, where Bishop's Peak, non-Title I, and with less students in our subgroups, receives 42 or 46,000. I can't recall what it was, but I really love that additional money is available and being applied where the greatest need resides for our students, both academically and socio-emotionally. So a shout out to you, Mr. Black, for the work you're doing at CL Smith, and to all of our elementary schools who are working so hard in behalf of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're not done yet. Yeah.
Ready
We've got,
for middle?
yeah, Mr. O'Connor.
Yes, thank you. Before Ms. Shepherd leaves, I want to give a big shout out to Ms. Shepherd, because the cover page that you really enjoy and appreciate, Ms. Shepherd created that. So thank you for that. At the secondary level, obviously, much like you've heard already, I love what Stephanie said about the nesting, board priorities, board initiatives, LCAP process, and at the secondary level, the SPSA. I'm not sure if Mr. Unger or Mr. Buckman mentioned this about the SPSA being that really important document at the site level. I would also suggest and argue that perhaps the schools to watch review at the middle schools, and then the WASC process at the high schools are so integral to that. So if you think about our LCAP as that overarching umbrella with regard to our board priorities and initiatives, and then at the site level, you've got the SPSA standing there. Alongside that, at the middle grades, you have the schools to watch process and documentation. And over here at high school, you have the WASC process and documentation, and they should fit seamlessly together. So that's something that you always want to keep back in your mind. Lisa and myself had the opportunity yesterday to sit with the WASC visiting team at Morro Bay High School. And one of their very first questions was, how does the LCAP process in your district work? What are those board priorities and initiatives? And guess what? How does that weave together with the development of SPSAs and the WASC document and process? So it was a precursor to what we were doing this evening. And actually, Lisa and I both mentioned that we were actually presenting our SPSAs this evening. And so when you look at that commonality, that is that oversight from a district perspective, but all in the right reason, because we are fulfilling those board priorities. So this evening, we're going to hear from Mr. Minard at Laguna Middle School, and then Mr. Dickinson at San Luis Obispo High School. We give Mr. Scaldi the night off because he's got WASC right now. And then Mr. Minard's going through the process right now, schools to watch, and Mr. Dickinson's going through his WASC review in March. So more to come. So here they come.
Right. Mr. Minard, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. And even as we're all talking about the nesting idea, another thing that's just so important as we look at these documents that are long with lots of data and lots of words and boxes. And so one of the reasons that Mr. Dickinson and I both wanted to draw our attention back to, really, we're talking about serving our students. And so we just wanted to put some pictures in of just these students that are impacted by these plans and by our pursuits every day. And so I'd love to go through and tell you about each event and what these things are. And if you want to chat later, I'd be happy to share. But just it's fun to highlight our staff and students because really they're the ones that are enjoying the fruit of this and also really a part of this work as we're pursuing this. Because one unique thing for us at the secondary level is our school site councils also include students. And so this is not just an adult thing that's happening to them, but adults and students talking together about how we continue to do the best we can as school sites. So I'm going to jump in, and as we talked about kind of this nesting idea of goals, one thing that our school site has tried to do is really hone in on a couple of things that we can kind of unite around and focus our work around. And so I just want to share with you our Laguna Middle School kind of guiding goals. Everything we do as we talk with staff, we always try to connect back to these two goals. First one being that all staff and students are safe, connected, and supported as a part of our school community. And we really see that as foundational. It's difficult to get into the real business of what we do in schools and learning and growing students if those things aren't happening. And then that next step is all students learning and thriving. And we specifically worded it with those ING words because that's an ongoing nonstop process for our students, and it looks different for each of them. And yet it's a fun thing to be pursuing together. And those things are both things that we're pursuing throughout kind of this conversation today. And I'm going to go ahead and take a moment and just share some celebrations we have. So one of the big ones, and Mr. O'Connor was talking about schools to watch for us as a school, is we are in the midst of our process and have actually just recently for schools to watch had our paper application or our paper kind of write-up of where we're at in our reflective process be accepted by the California Middle Schools Alliance. And so now we're waiting for having a school site visit. So we're going to have a team of middle school educators come to our school site and really look at what we're doing and get to have some great conversations about how we keep improving. And just for those of you who don't know Schools to Watch well, it really is a continuous improvement model, and it's focused specifically on middle school and really wanted to see those be key years for our students developmentally as they move from being children to being young adults. And it's such a pivotal time in their lives. And so it's really fun to dig in on that with our staff and our community, and now with a broader community across our state and nation of middle school educators as we're looking to do well there. Also, another huge thing for our school site is as we talk about these goals of how we support our students, our staff this last year, for those of you who don't know, our certificated staff vote on and select bell schedules at our secondary schools. And so they actually selected in a collaborative process as a staff, a new bell schedule that includes a 31-minute and 31 because of how the math worked for the other classes, but 31-minute tutorial, which is every Thursday, and a 31-minute advisory. And that advisory is really focused on social emotional learning, and then also some academic kind of tier one, just teaching students. Last week, one of the things in it was organizing your backpack, and every kid opened their backpack up and we got stuff out. And if you've seen a middle schooler's backpack recently, that's a terrifying thing to dive into. And yet those are things that we're trying to help our students learn and grow in. And then in tutorial, really giving our teachers a chance to pull students in and actually choose students to call in to give support to. And that's something every Monday morning in our time together in TCT and ACT, they're talking about which kids they're targeting to support and then calling those kids in. And then other students can pick who haven't been selected by a teacher. And we also have some really great enrichment opportunities for students as well. And I'll talk about those in a few moments. But that's a huge thing that was staff run, staff led of pursuing supporting our students in some different and unique ways, which is pretty fun. And then lastly, just something that we're really proud of is we've kind of revamped some of the ways that we support our English learners at our school site. One of the main ways is developing English learner support plans, which is really a comprehensive plan looking at where our students currently are at based on data, and then giving great feedback to them as students of their next steps for growth, and to their teachers of how they can best support them in their ongoing language acquisition. And it's really a huge work that our EL teacher does in developing these plans, and actually with the support of LCAP and some of these other great things we're talking about. This summer, she actually developed that ahead of the school year so that every kid started the first day of school with an EL plan in place to be able to support them well at Laguna. And last year we had huge success in seeing actually 30% of our English learners redesignate, which is huge and super exciting to see these students really reaching that mastery level in their English language acquisition. So just really want to shout that out. Ms. Rollinger is amazing. And it's really fun to see our students really thriving. So a couple things. This first area is one that's actually going to be really similar to Mr. Dickinson. We were laughing that we had almost the same things that we were thinking about what we're doing in our first focus area. And really the focus is on supporting our staff as that first layer of supporting our students in classes through professional learning communities, through professional development that we've been doing over the course of multiple years as a district that's really focused on teacher clarity and best practices in the classroom, and then on using data to really target how we're supporting our kids in the classroom on a daily basis. And so that's something that you'll see across our secondary sites has really been a focus for our secondary staff over the last couple of years. And then I want to dig in a teeny bit just on a couple of things. I spoke briefly about advisory and tutorial. One cool thing I really want to plug for our advisories is our staff wanted them to be a standalone group, meaning it's not tacked on to another class, so that every teacher had one. And one thing that we really wanted to pursue and we were able to do through some very complex spreadsheets was make each advisory be similar to in ratios our entire school population, especially for significant subgroups of students that we're concerned about. For example, we typically English data is an area where you can see kind of projections of how students will fare. And so we actually have a similar number of students who earned a 3, 4, 1, and 2 in each advisory across the entire school. So you don't have one advisory that might have all advanced students and one advisory that might have many students that are all really struggling. And then we also broke up a few other subgroups like our English learners that we're really honing in on. And then another population our staff has really developed a focus around, which is really making sure that our Hispanic Latino students are succeeding at the same rate as their classmates. And so that group also, we made sure to where every advisory had the same ratio of each of those subgroups to really make sure we could be targeted in our intervention and support while also building these connected communities that are really a microcosm of the whole school. So that's something that's been exciting, and our staff have felt like, having 3 or 4 students that they're targeting support in each class allows them to really provide that intervention in a really tactful way. Also, we have multiple awesome after-school tutoring opportunities. We have math teachers and English teachers multiple days a week staying after school, providing tutoring for students, which is a great opportunity. We also have some Cal Poly students through our Cal Poly Fellows program that are helping out and on campus after school providing some tutoring. And then we also have some EL tutoring for our English learners, again, trying to provide some really targeted intervention for our students to take next steps in their language acquisition. And then ongoing English learner support, like I shared earlier, those EL plans continue to be something we're doing. And this year we've added on a layer of targeted one-on-one intervention or one-on small group intervention for some of our long-term English learners to really try to help them make that next step to redesignate. And then our last area is really around that culture of care and that connection on campus. And there's little things that we've sought to do that are really powerful. One of those, our PTA has supported us in making sure that every student has a Laguna Pride shirt. So they have something they can wear every Friday to show their Laguna Lancer pride. And that's a big thing. If you can think back to your experiences in school, having things to show, kids call it swag these days, is what the gear is called. And to have some Laguna swag really helps them feel like they're a part of our community in a powerful way. And so that's huge that every staff and student have that ability to show up and wear those. And every single day of the week, they're not good at wearing them only on Fridays. You'll see a huge number of Laguna shirts out and about on our campus. We also had the chance to begin and are in the process of continuing throughout this year, some training for our staff about building trusted spaces and really looking at our classroom environments being a space that our students are comfortable and confident in, and our staff feel like they're equipped to be able to support students in a variety of circumstances in class. And then also student connection is huge for us. We actually just today had every student in advisory take a survey on how they're feeling about that first goal of feeling safe, connected, and supported, and really looking at how we can connect with and support our students who aren't yet feeling connected and supported in really targeted ways. And we'll actually be looking at that data with our staff and then pursuing really connecting with and drawing those students into our school. And then lastly, student involvement. We just have so many great things going on. I'll give you 2 examples. One, we have over 20 clubs on campus this year, with our students being highly involved with our staff in a variety of things, multiple different worldview and cultural clubs, as well as just some really fun, goofy middle school clubs, which is super fun to have on campus. And then another thing we're really excited about, we just had our first dance activity And of our about 850 students, we had over 500 students attending that event, which is a pretty exciting thing and a very fun middle school dance in all the ways that you can imagine. So good times. And now on to Ron.
All right, so to move on to Slow High, also opening with some pictures, great students and staff. Similarly, tying all this in with our LCAP focus areas 1, 2, and 3, and it's really helpful to have those guiding goals and focus areas for us. Now with the focus area 1 about rigorous and relevant and engaging learning experiences, we do a lot of work with this, right? This is just at the heart of what we're doing. And as you think about it, Slow High, where our test scores are going up and we have more students scoring with a score of 3 or higher on AP exams and more students completing CTE pathways. You can go on this long list of these things that we're proud of, but the humble engine that drives a lot of this work, so on Monday mornings, we're working together and collaborating in professional learning communities. And Nathan had those questions up there. What do we want our students to learn? And how will we know that they've learned it? What will we do if they haven't learned it yet? And what will we do once they have? Just those questions really can guide a lot of really important work. And one of the things that Dr. McDowell has brought to us is this idea of a learning sprint, which is a little bit more of a lab model. Often when you're in professional learning communities, you can spend a lot of time just designing things and talking about things and not actually implementing specific teaching strategies, collecting data, seeing how it works, sharing that with your colleagues and planning next steps. So we've been spending a lot of time on those learning sprints, and you can see the positive effect of that when you're looking at, for example, our lower number of students with Ds and Fs, because our teachers are focusing on a select group of students and really trying things and seeing how it works and sharing ideas. What would you do in this situation? This is what this student wrote. What kind of feedback would you give? And so we're learning from each other. And the more that we can do that in a continuous way and collaborate, the better off we'll be and our students will be. So that's at the heart of a lot of our work there with that first focus area and really devoting a lot of time to it. And then what's informing that work is the other professional development that's happening as our teachers are going to AP conferences and English teacher conferences and doing work as math teachers with curriculum. All that then informs those conversations that happen. Similarly with McDowell, and Mr. Minor referred to it, but just the work on surface, deep, and transfer. So when McDowell talks about rigor, that's how he defines it as having an equal focus on surface learning and deep learning and learning to transfer to different contexts. So that's a lot of the work that we're doing there with focus area 1. With focus area 2, it's looking at how we're having those substantial academic gains with all of our subgroups and whether we are using some sort of tiered system of support. And it's been interesting to try to create some interesting ways to have tiered support. One of the things that Mr. Minor was helpful in implementing at our school is our student support advisory meetings, where each week we're sitting down with our counselors and admin team, and we're looking at students and talking about students and talking about what interventions we can put in place for different students. And having that be a weekly habit of how we interact as a staff is really important. We have an increasing number of things that we can do to help intervene for students. One of those, Mr. Minor was talking about tutorial being new at Laguna this year. Tutorial was new at San Luis Obispo High School last year. That provides an opportunity for our students and staff to engage in intervention, enrichment, and connection each week during the special period on Mondays. So the same process where teachers go through and select students they want to work with, and students then also have a chance to select who they want to work with and get help from. So that's a key thing that we're using. We also have study skills, a more expanded idea of study skills, where it doesn't just serve students on IEPs, but any student who really needs that extra support. So that's a nice intervention to have. And we've been expanding co-teaching at our school, really focusing this year on having common preps for the special education teacher and the general education teacher so that they can work together. And that's going well. And our district is focused on that and try to provide some PD in that as well. Tutoring after school for students who are English learners. And then our AVID program this year, Mr. Harmon's doing an excellent job. We have one teacher who's really taken it on and developing a lot of great partnerships with Cal Poly to provide our students with even more resources and a great articulation of that program. And then focus area 3, as we were engaging in our WASP conversations that Mr. O'Connor was talking about, one of the reflections that our teachers had is how well we have been doing in this focus area 3 as a school. And you see, if you think about our counseling team, how our counseling team has grown in some really great ways recently, where through grant funding, we now have Austin Miller, who's a social emotional learning counselor. And we also have partnership with the County Behavioral Health. We have Amanda, who is here, and she does 3 days a week. She's a social worker, and we're developing this wellness center model. And I have some stats about that. And also just a school-wide goal for each student to be known by name, strength, need, and interest. And we track that data and work on that. And some things that Austin shared, I was like, hey, I'm going and talking with the school board. And he's, of course, so proud of the work that he is helping lead with our counseling team. And so the way, he talks about it similarly in that multi-tiered way, about the Wellness Center being designed as this tier 2 resource on campus that will serve up to 20% of our student population in these really targeted ways. And there's a mix of workshops, classes, school-wide activities, individualized counseling. And I've talked to a lot of our students who are in the groups that are running, the grief group, the group that's for managing their emotional ups and downs. And like, this is good. And they're just talking about the levels of support that they're getting in our school and how meaningful it's been for them to support them and to connect them to our community. So that's going well, and it keeps going well. We're just building it as we go, but we have really good people doing that and great students that we're working with. So that's some highlights from our SPSA at SLO High. And we welcome questions from the board.
All right. Let's see, Mr. Unger. Then I don't see any other lights on this time.
Well, again, you guys, it was just so impressive to read through your site SPSAs. A couple of things that really jumped out at me. First of all, at the middle school is you guys' commitment to Schools to Watch and your commitment to student involvement and student engagement. I was really impressed with that. I do want to give a particular shout out to Loams. Their site council chair is one of their students, which I think is pretty cool. At your school, Roland, I thought what was interesting is you guys were really, I think you had a really strong emphasis on CTE and CTE completion, which was something that you guys were looking at last year in terms of your data, whereas Morro Bay High School was looking at AP. And so both those things were reflected in these site plans, which I thought was pretty interesting. Your wellness centers at the high schools, looking at your students' social emotional needs, us being able to do that, it's just so impressive. I was really happy. And then finally, just your school engagement and how you guys are working to engage your students, reduce bullying, all that kind of stuff. Great work, and yeah, tally ho, right?
All right, Mr. Clausen.
So it seems like one of the harder areas of the LCAP is embracing the third area and the culture of care, but it seems like you've identified some really specific solutions between implementing the wellness center and the program of knowing every student by name and strength. I guess my question is, how do you see things, and this is for Mr. Dickinson, I think specifically, how do you feel like things have evolved since a couple of years ago when you joined the district? Is there specific evolution that program has led to? Those two programs specifically feel like newer things that seem difference making. And so just wondering if you can characterize the progress or change, knowing it was COVID time, but still, I mean, those are big programs.
Totally, yeah. So there was definitely a real need for it, and that manifested in a lot of different ways. And just in the interactions that we're having with our students and the things that they're going through. And also the experience that families had of trying to get support for their students and having these long lines, that just never ended up with them seeing someone, who could work through things. So that the more that we can build our capacity at the school level of having those connections with students and trusted adults in people's lives, the better it is for everyone. So it's definitely a real need, and it's great that we've been able to increase our staff and to make these things happen. So it's helpful to have the money behind it, the energy behind it, And just as I alluded to in some of those conversations before, I do hear frequently from students that they feel like they are getting support that they need, and hearing from staff that it feels good to be able to provide that. It doesn't mean we're fully doing everything, right, and meeting every need at all times. That's hard, but the more that we can feel that we have that capacity, that's good. So I think we're doing well, but of course there are still real needs in our students' lives. And you feel that going into finals week and just after tryouts for students, trying out for teams and the stress of that. And like, you know, life is real and complex and in many ways difficult. But you know, it's like that first noble truth, like there is suffering, you know, like, so it's okay, like, right? And that's okay. And then where do we move from there? Is important.
Thank you, Mr. Buckman, and then Mrs. Roger.
Could I add one thing to that actually? So that practice of trying to know every student is something that I stole and am using at our school as well, because I saw the impact of it. My year I got to overlap with Roland and saying that, work with our staff. So it's a great thing.
Yeah, no, and also, I mean, just making a systematic policy. I mean, and Mr. O'Connor, I know you knew everyone too when back in the day. But I mean, I think the policy makes a cultural effort for the whole school to embrace that. And I think that's really cool. And it seems like a great program.
Mr. Buckman, followed by Mrs. Roger.
Thanks again. Pretty amazing. And I appreciate the nesting concept here. One thing that didn't jump out at me, and so I just, I'm going to need some help understanding, is what's sort of in place, and maybe it's impossible, I don't know, in place to sort of proactively identify a student who's is heading for difficult. Does that make sense? Is it either, both? I'm kind of thinking sometimes it's probably both.
Yeah, I mean, I'll turn it over to these guys, but just system wise, I mean, one of the pieces we talk with all of our secondary sites around is getting to know all of our students all of the time. That starts being visible at the front of campus, where students are coming in through the gate, getting out of a car, getting off a bus. You can see a lot when you observe students first thing in the morning. You can see who's having a hard day or who's not had the greatest opportunity to leave a vehicle right there and then. And that gives you that first insight. Also, as Roland and Nathan described, and Scott and Carl and Chris do the same things at their respective sites, getting to know students by name, getting to know their interests, and then working with your team, systemizing that. When you're having your administrative meetings with your counseling team, with your admin team, when you're pulling on those extra resources, whether it be through the wellness center or your resources that are coming to your campus, to really identify which students are struggling connecting with school. If you're out on the playground or you're out at lunchtime, you're out at recess, you start to visibly see who's connecting, how and where. Then you have to take it to the level of the school site and the academic piece, who's being successful in which class. And you're pulling maybe progress monitoring, your progress, you're looking at DNF lists, you're looking at who's attending, and you're looking at running your absenteeism list, and you're trying to make sure that you're meeting all of those needs. So systematically, you're building in all of those supports and looking at it through that lens. Those are like aggregates as examples. Feel free to add.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Roger.
Thank you. I appreciate the SPSAs and this presentation. I have a couple of questions. I think I probably know the answers, but I'm going to throw them out there. For Mr. Minor, middle school is a time when students can be exquisitely self-conscious. And I really am appreciative of the after school tutoring time that you're making available, because I think it allows kids that don't want to stand out in class as not knowing or understanding something to self-refer for tutoring. But I wonder, have we provided a late bus so that students can avail themselves of those opportunities?
That's a wonderful question. So yes, we have a late bus every day that's an hour and a half after our school end time. which is about 20 minutes after tutoring ends each day, and also after most of our sports and after school clubs end as well. So I'm really strategic with our transportation department on making sure that we set up transportation for any student that wants to participate in those after school activities.
So do you have any sense yet how well the EL tutoring is being received?
Yeah, great question. I would say that it is pretty targeted right now. So, in some ways it's nice when you have a small group that you specifically have asked and invited and called parents to encourage them to come. As opposed to sometimes if you have 50 students show up, it can be almost challenging to service all of them at once. And so right now we're in a great spot where we're picking out groups of students that we want to target and then actually reaching out to those families and asking them to have their student attend, and really then getting to sit and work in small groups with them and on in strategic grouping, even on things that they need to kind of further develop or work on.
And then if necessary, they are also availing themselves of the transportation.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And for Mr. Dickinson, I love the idea of the wellness centers. It's just a concept I totally champion. But I'm wondering, when I looked at your materials, I saw a teacher referral, but I'm assuming, but I would like to confirm that students are also self-referring.
Yeah, so currently the way the model works is, so we, as Mr. O'Connor was saying, we have these processes that exist to identify students who do have some different needs. And that comes through our counselors, that comes from our teachers, that comes from our observations of students, comes from parents, it comes from students themselves sharing that need. But then when we're in that meeting each Wednesday, the SSA meeting, where we're with counselors and admin, that is when we're making some of those determinations on what is the best intervention at that time. So in that way, that is guided through that process and through our counseling team. The ways that students can access the Wellness Center in other ways is they run workshops. So students can sign up for different workshops. They can be part of groups, things like that. So there are parts that are more self-selecting in that way, but then parts that run through our process in a different way. And the reason for that is if it's just always one-on-one counseling, that can sort of bog down the system a little bit and make it, limits the ability to really make a big difference on the campus. One thing our counselors have noticed is by having more people on our team, they are also able to do more of that one-on-one work. And so that's good as well.
So what about for the student who is, for whatever reason, just having a terrible day that day and feels the need to just distance themselves and have a little quiet space? Is the Wellness Center an appropriate place for them to go?
Yeah, so the Wellness Center can be that place to go. So this week we had that situation where a student wanted to see a counselor. The counselor was busy with another student. And I was just able to text over to the Wellness Center and say, here's the situation. I'm meeting with the student right now, but can I do a little handoff to you for a little bit? And so that worked beautifully. But then the idea, then we met up with Austin afterward and said, moving forward, what kind of support should we give? And the idea was, let's keep having the counselor be that main source of support. And I can still see the student if I really need to, but that doesn't need to be the plan moving forward. So that happens. We just got that Friday Night Live grant, and Mr. Pinkerton's been great about helping us develop this new wellness center space. And one of the things that comes with that new space that we're going to create in where our old library or band room is a counseling aide who's going to be able to do a check-in with students, sort of a triage, have some questions that they ask or answer, like fidgets, just like little things that help people get regulated and then get back to class as soon as possible. So there is that ability, but the idea is it's not just people coming in all the time during class, for example.
I think it's a wonderful step forward. Thank you very much.
Can I?
Yeah, Mr. Buckman.
Yep. So I'm gonna follow up on Marilyn. This is what I thought I heard at some prior meetings is we were gonna there was going to be a space on campus that students could just go to, like a calm, quiet place. And in my mind, I had pictured the wellness center as including that kind of function. Is that no checking in with a counselor, no need for a counselor, just need to just get away from it all?
Yeah, and so the wellness center open, if you think about a whole school day, like before school break, lunch, after school, like those are great times for that. But if it's just all the time, like during the school day, everyone getting away from it all, that's not good. That's not a well model. Yeah, that's not good.
Okay, I just wanted to throw in a couple of things here before we move on. And I hope not to be redundant. Mr. Meinert, I am so excited about the Schools to Watch. I participated at Loams in any way they needed and attended some meetings, and you've made it to that next step. And I really hope your staff is cooperative and on board and realizes what a feather in the cap for the school, separate and apart for the district, but just what a great accomplishment this is and ongoing. And it speaks to their professionalism and devotion and attention to learning and the professional environment. I'm very excited and I really hope it comes to pass. And I appreciate the work you're doing and your staff is doing to achieve this accomplishment that I really hope occurs for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing to be in such a great group of educators and really be pursuing this together. So it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
It's this awkward time though of like celebrate, like we made it past this first step and sort of like awesome. And then like, all right, but we still have a upcoming visit. And so
I'll be
it's
really
exciting.
anything we can do as a board, as a district, as community members, as being involved to help with moving that forward, we're happy to do. I also, something I want to speak to briefly is your devotion, all of you, and including Mr. O'Connor, because I remember this from when you were principal at San Luis Obispo High School, is that attention to all students. I mean, I think that it's very common, especially at the secondary level, to have the students who take up the most time, either they're troubled or have more challenges before them. You know who those students are. And the students at the top, the high flyers, as Mrs. Roger refers to them, who are achieving really well, and they stand out in a crowd no matter where they are. So you know who they are. But all these students in the middle who come to school, who do the work, who participate in things, but aren't in either of those, the bottom or the top. They're the solid day-to-day kids. Your ability to know who they are is really meaningful, because I think so many of them they're not the standouts in particularly, but the piece where you said, Mr. Dickinson, about knowing their strengths and their needs and who they are, that ability, everyone wants to feel seen. And to make that effort, I really applaud. So thank you for that. I think those can be the hardest kids to do that for, because they're easily taken for granted. So thank you for making that effort. I also wanted to echo what everyone has said about the wellness centers. I think it's great. I appreciate that we're doing that. And the tutorials, that was new to me. I thank Mrs. Yamashita for spending about the 6 minutes we had between our meetings yesterday to explain. I wasn't familiar with what those were, and what an awesome opportunity for students. And then, we talk about the clubs and they're wonderful, but realizing also, again, thank you to the staff, because no club can exist on a school campus without an advisor. And so they are taking the time to be responsive to student needs. to create and monitor and participate in those clubs. So just I think that recognition needs to be out there. And then I think reviewing these single plans is also a great, as we enter the LCAP process at the first of the year, if I'm correct, that we'll be opening that up, going forward with that. What a great groundwork this is for all of us, I would say, as we begin that process. This is really good information, at least for me to have as we begin that process, to know that we've taken the time to review these plans. You've taken this time to fill us in more detail, that we will go into that process more knowledgeable. So this is serving a variety of purposes for us. So thank you for that. I am now going to go, pardon me?
I'm afraid.
Well, first, we
Sure.
are not done with this.
No, I know.
I'm going to go to the public to see if anyone has any remarks or questions about this. This is a discussion item. Oh no, this is actually, we're approving these this evening. So this is an action item. So first I'll go to those who are in attendance here to see if anyone has any public comment. Seeing nobody, I will ask Ms. Dawson if there is anyone via Zoom who wishes to address the board. All right, then we will move on to a motion and a second on approving our single plans for student achievement this evening. Mr. Buckman?
Thanks.
Oh, Mrs. Roger?
Okay.
I was just going to make the motion.
Yeah, okay. Is that all right? Okay, so no,
So,
I'm
what are we doing?
Oh, it doesn't always work. Okay, Mrs. Roger, a motion, Mr. Buckman wants to make a second, I'm sure. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman,
Yeah.
Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you for your detailed presentations. We appreciate it. At this time, we are going to take a break.
Thank you.
It is just about the top of the hour, so let's please return at 8:10. We are going to get underway right at 8:10 with you or without you. to item 10.02. Our California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, our CAST results.
All right, good evening. We're here to talk about our California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress test results. We're actually revisiting this subject. In a previous board meeting, we did a deep dive into school sites. And tonight what we're going to be doing is looking at comparison districts. And we'll do that in a couple of different ways. But first, if we look at the umbrella of the CASP system, tonight we're going to be discussing the science assessment, which we'll refer to as CAST. We'll also take a look at the English language arts as well as the mathematics. It's getting late, you guys. Mathematics assessment. All right, so the way that the state calculates proficiency is a compilation of those students that score a level 3, as well as those students that score a level 4. And so that when we're talking about proficiency, we're talking about those two scores being combined, and that is the way that the state shares data out publicly as well. So within English language arts and math, our assessments are, and also on the CAST, our assessments are taken by students on Chromebooks. They are computer-based tests. And so what you can see here are the various strands that students are being assessed on. And then we get an overarching score for ELA and for math that embody those elements in those strands. All right, so we tried to make this as big as possible, and you'll see that the score across the top is 75% proficiency. Of course, it goes all the way up to 100, but we wanted to make it a little bit bigger and easier for everyone to see. So we're looking at this through a different lens this evening. You'll see San Luis Coastal is the second from the left, and our proficiency rate when we look at those 3s and 4s combined for all of the grade levels tested is at 65%. There are a variety of school districts that you'll see that we're comparing ourselves to, and we're doing that with Dr. Prater's leadership because we wanted to look at not only our county comparisons, but also we wanted to take a look at some of those districts that are similar to us in terms of the SED population that they have. Even with those, as we look across the state and we're searching to find those similar numbers of SED populations, you can see that our scores are still exceeding our comparison districts that are listed here. So as we take those bigger proficiency numbers and we disaggregate them out, this actually allows us to reflect a little bit further on how we are performing in comparison to these districts. So that number on the left is the same that you saw on the previous slide. We're at 65% overall. And we have some celebrations to share out as we look at this disaggregated data. Our SED population is rising above all of those comparison districts. And we also wanted to highlight our students with disabilities as well. When you look at that column, we are far and above many of the comparison districts within there. So huge celebrations. One area that we want to highlight there, it's still absolutely a celebration, and we have work and further investigation to do. I feel like we can reach out to some of these districts that are outperforming us within our RFEP category, because we are not rising above in that category far and away. There are some comparisons and maybe some learnings that we can do from some of those other districts. So one other lens to look through this evening is we took it a step further, and this is a comparison to other basic aid districts. And so these would probably be categorized as demographically dissimilar to our school district. These are other affluent districts, but their per pupil spending is much higher than ours. So what you'll see here is that this is what we want to strive to achieve, and we are reaching out and we're in connection with several of these districts trying to learn from them, knowing that they are not necessarily similar to us demographically with our SED populations. So you'll see there we have connections, and we're talking with Palo Alto. We're talking with some of these other districts to try to learn what are their practices, what do they attribute their success rates. All right, and next up, Mr. O'Connor is going to talk a little bit about math.
Good evening again. So similarly, as Ms. Shepherd said, we're looking at comparative data with regard to our neighboring districts and other districts that are like us throughout the state. And as Ms. Shepherd said, if you're looking at the far left, you're looking at that column that shows the level of proficiency district-wide in our math, and remembering that we're talking about 3 through 8, grades 3 through 8 in our math assessments. And we're also talking in high school, we're talking about 11th grade only. So that's that snapshot as we start to think about our SBAC assessment in high school, 11th grade only. And you can start to see some of those comparative numbers with regard to this. As we break this out and go a little deeper and dig into this, we can again celebrate the work of our district at 57% proficient. And then we want to call out the work of our SWD, our students with disabilities again. And we also have work to do with our students SED. However, it's also an area that continues to be an area of growth for us, as well as our EL with regard to math. But again, the celebration is that work that's going on K-12 when we talk about our Bridges math curriculum at the elementary grades. We talk about our CPM 6, 7, and 8, and then Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 when we think about our work around CPM. I will say as an anecdotal, I'm working currently with our district office with regard to having a site visit. As Ms. Shepherd said, other districts want to come to us and to speak with us and visit us about what we're doing in math. So we have a visit coming from Santa Cruz City Schools on the 5th of December. This is the second time they'll have come. They came last spring. And we hosted them at Laguna and at Slow High, and they got to observe our math teachers. They spoke with our math teachers. They spoke with students. They looked at our curriculum because they wanted to learn from us. What are we doing? Because we're a similar district to them. And in their words, we're doing really, really well. So they're actually bringing 30 people on the 5th of December because they really want to look at all of the wonderful things we're trying to achieve in our math programs. And here, as Ms. Shepherd said, we are looking at those basic aid districts throughout the state of California that may have more affluence and more per pupil spending. And we can look at their demographic breakdown, but these are the areas that we want to learn from, or districts that we want to look at and puzzle out what are they doing, and so that we can learn to grow in a similar way. Science, and we talk about our CAST scores, so CAST, and we're looking at in science, you're looking at 5th grade assessment, 8th grade assessment, and then in high school. So 5th grade, 8th grade, and then in high school. And high school is a really interesting nuance because you're assessing students in the 11th grade. However, if the student was not assessed in the 11th grade, they're assessed in the 12th grade. So I want to let that sit for a moment. So if they're assessed in the 11th grade, that means that a student in our high school would have taken biology in the 9th grade. They'll have taken chemistry in the 10th grade. They may have taken one of maybe 10 different courses in the 11th grade. Doesn't necessarily mean it's physics. It could be micromarine biology, anatomy, physiology. It could be AP biology. I could go through the list. However, if they don't take an assessment in the 11th grade for whatever reason, then they come and take it in 12th grade. So that's something to like ponder over and think about when we look at our assessment scores there. In the 5th through 8th grade, or in 5th grade, we start to look at our district-wide comparison with our similar districts in our county and our neighboring districts throughout the state. And again, I want to celebrate the work on the far left, 47% proficient district-wide for those students who are assessed in 5th grade, 8th grade, and then again in 11th grade. And you see that comparative data. And then when we drill down and we start to look at it, we see by grade level, 5th grade, 44% proficient, 8th grade, 54% proficient, and then a high school, 54% proficient. And, you know, in the elementary grades, we're using our FOSS curriculum K-8. And then as we look in high school, we're looking at our next generation science standards. I will tell you that a large part to play in our work at elementary grades is elementary innovation. We really want to grow the experiential opportunities for our students in the elementary grades and build that into our secondary innovative practices in middle and throughout high school. and give the students an opportunity to kind of have hands-on learning in our science classes as best as possible. Celebrations. On the far left, I have this responsibility. Celebrations, we're outperforming county, state, demographically similar districts across all areas, ELA, math, science. That's a real celebration. It's a testament to the work of our teachers. It's a testament to the work of our district office, our board for setting that as a priority. We're outperforming most districts in significant subgroups. Do we have still work to do? Absolutely. But we also have to keep in mind we're doing really, really good things with our students. And finally, we are, pretty close to and reaching for those more affluent basic aid districts. We have a ways to go. We have some things to learn and to grow from. But this is something we have to keep in mind also when we talk about how are we competing against the Palo Altos or similar basic aid districts who are more affluent and funded in that regard. And Ms. Shepherd's going to finish out with next steps.
So this goes along nicely with our single plans for student achievement in that we're constantly looking for what is that next step? How can we continue to improve? And there is always room for growth and improvement. So these key next steps are just some of the things that we're talking about and looking ahead to, and many of them, our literacy adoption, as well as the teacher professional development that will be embedded as we conduct that rollout and the implementation. That's really going to be a key next step to improve our ELA performance. We want to ensure that students are receiving first best instruction at the tier 1 level. The other piece goes in line with one of our focus areas, which is continuing to close that achievement gap. We want to make sure that we are analyzing not just the high level compilation of data as we're doing tonight, but starting to drill down further, looking at school level, having teachers know how are their students scoring and cross-referencing that and triangulating that data with other sources so that we're really identifying what are those gaps in skills for our students and how do we then fill those gaps strategically. The last but not least thing on here is focusing on elementary science instruction. So although our scores are above and rising above the rest, we still need to ensure that students are receiving continuous and having that science instruction be something that is at the forefront for our students so they get those experiences. So questions?
It'd be curious to see, well, first of all, the chart, the bar graph that shows the other basic aid. Is that the entire list of basic aid districts in our state? No. Then why that? Why that group of basic aid?
Yeah, Mr. Banfield, I could respond to that. There's over 100 basic aid districts in California.
Okay, I was wondering.
And
Okay.
the majority of basic aid districts are K-8, our elementary school districts. So it's hard to compare us to a Montecito, which has 350 students, K-5. Okay. So I didn't include those smaller districts, but I did include the districts that are unified. So K-12 and as you can see in the chart, we pulled districts that were like us, similar to us. And then we also pulled districts that were basic aid that may have less than 10% socioeconomically disadvantaged.
Yeah.
Where we have 41%.
Sure. That was going to be something that. So we're going to, I guess one of our goals perhaps is to improve our performance based on those basic aid districts, right? We're going to try to approach their level of performance.
So we are shooting, this is it's an endeavor, if you will. We are a low wealth basic aid district.
Yeah.
So we're on the bottom end.
Yeah.
Where we make about $12,000 per child. Compare that to Palo Alto, which last I checked was 28,000 per child. And
More than
Laguna
double.
Beach,
Yeah.
28,000 per child with less than 10% socioeconomically disadvantaged. So, but when you look at their scores against our scores, I am here to tell you, I think we can catch them, is what I'm telling you.
Well, if there's a
And-
will, there's a way.
And
Right.
Palo Alto has 2 parcel taxes.
What is that?
Palo Alto has 2 parcel taxes where their community passed an additional tax twice, two separate ones, and they are able to fund elective programs like music, art. They also can hire additional counselors. But you know, it's an issue. It's a fabulous district, but it's also a district that's got a lot of pressure cooker issues there. And I won't go down that road, but I will tell you, it's for me, I look at our data, and I said this when I interviewed for this job 14 years ago, that I still believe it today. We have not unlocked just yet our true potential as a district across all subgroups. And I believe we can unlock it. I believe we can reach our fullest potential. And I believe it's the secret sauce lies in our work with equity. It lies in our work raising all kids up, knowing all kids, making sure all kids are seen and known, and trying to bring people together as opposed to separate kids out. And there's a lot that goes in the middle of all that, but high quality instruction, a great curriculum, good assessments, so that we can be methodical in our work. But we're leaving kids behind because we don't have those components truly in place, and we're not quite working together the way we need to in order to realize our potential. And once we figure this out, we will exceed those districts.
See, we're developing tools that some of these more affluent districts aren't even considering, perhaps, because we are trying to get everybody, right?
Well,
we're trying to help everyone.
Yeah, and I think it's an American issue, American problem, in that some of us see diversity as a hindrance. But then those among us that don't see it, rather see it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think, and I truly, genuinely believe this, we're on that road to embracing our diversity, even though we aren't really that diverse, but we're socioeconomically diverse, for sure. And we have a tremendous amount of work to do, but I feel we're on the right track. And you heard it tonight in the single plans, and you're going to hear it all through the spring with our LCAP work. And we're going to continue to do that work that we've been doing, by the way, since this board adopted the strategic initiatives in 2011, and you called all this out in 2011. And if you ever are curious and you want to go back and look at it, that was incredibly important work. It was the foundational work. And fast forward 12 years and we're still trying to make this work. But as we look at our data and tonight, this presentation, I feel we've come about 70% towards our goal. We still have another 30% to tackle, and that's probably the hardest 30%, right? It really requires grit and collaboration and a willingness to identify our own personal issues and biases. And I feel we're on our way. I really genuinely do. And those are my thoughts on that.
I think it would be interesting at some point to review that progress that we've made since 2011.
That would be fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Clausen.
So there's no doubt those are fabulous results and just really exciting. And I think the only scenarios even where there's scores that are higher are in districts with totally different funding schedules. So first of all, really great. But I have two questions. So my first one's going to kind of come from my perspective on in how I would translate this in the business world. I've worked in businesses that are very quantitative, and when you achieve good results, it directly impacts the culture of the organization. It's something that employees take a lot of pride in. It's part of the culture and the identity of being affiliated with the brand. And so I guess my first question is, how does this translate? Might be a question for you, Dr. Frater. How does this translate to our staff and employees in terms of their identity here? Is that, obviously I'm sure they're proud, but I mean, is it fully understood? Is it fully embraced? Is it part of our identity? Is it not? How does these really strong results affect our culture? First question. And then the second one is, how do we take advantage of these so that the community fully understands how strong our results are and gives us credit for that? And I think we're humble and you know, we don't want to brag per se, but we've done really well and we consistently do really well. And how do we make sure that's fully appreciated? So maybe two not simple questions, but
super complicated questions to answer, and you always do those quite well. What I will say to the first question, which is, you know, how are the players coming around? Are they buying into this success story? And I think Leslie mentioned it in the celebrations that this happens when teachers work hard and believe in what they're doing and feel supported. And so, and all of this is happening despite a global pandemic. All of this has happened despite world tumult and turmoil on a lot of levels that none of us can escape, none of us. And so I will say to you that whenever we talk about test scores, most teachers that I know in my career, in my life, I'm married to one, look at test results skeptically, especially the state tests, okay? A more meaningful measure of identity and pride comes at the site level, more likely with local measures. Things that schools like in SBSAs identify as their value statement, that we're gonna drop chronic absenteeism rates by 40% from one year to the next. We're going to provide inputs with students so that they can tell us that what we're doing is actually working in their lives and making them feel better. I was reading an email that Angela Riles, who's our coordinator for our student support services for counseling, and she did a gratitude circle on Friday at the professional development day with the counseling group. And if I read it right, Janet, it was a beautiful thing. It was all of these newly hired and not newly hired people coming together whose role and job it is to get students to buy in and feel like they have an adult in their at their school that they care, that cares for them, that they trust, and that they feel like coming to school is safe. And so I guess a shortest way I can answer your first question is state testing is a hard measure to go out and brag about. Here at board meetings, it's kind of fun because board members oftentimes can point to that and say, look, we're moving in the right direction. But I think to a teacher at a school site, it's really got to be local. It's got to be a local measure. And then state testing validates and affirms the good work they've done. What I like about the Schools to Watch program at the middle school, it's a continuous improvement model anchored to staff, parent, and student buy-in. It's about getting all those groups together, working for the common good of that school. And in my experience, direct experience, that is a beautiful thing when you can get all the people rowing in the same direction. Better yet, you're giving everybody an oar so they can help paddle with you. And so I've seen great success at that level. And then your second question is kind of inextricably connected to it, I think, and that is, you know, how do we not just bring them along, but make it part of our culture? That idea of excellence, that idea of pride and in our role, in our profession. And every time I turn around as superintendent, and it's been this way quite a long time, is there's a real challenge when it comes to building communities, building your staff community, building your broader community, because in America right now, we're like tearing each other apart. Divisiveness and differences seem to be the name of the day. And so as principals or directors or superintendents, our job is magnified and it's challenged because we're trying to pull people who are angry at each other, angry at the world, disconnected and disaffected. And for all reasons that I can say, yep, I get that. And our job as schools, I've always felt, is a job. Our schools, if we do schooling correctly, it's a place of healing. It's a place of growth and understanding and empathy. And from all of that working together, if we can pull this off, I believe it's only at that point that we grow it from the inside out, as opposed from the top down, meaning test scores, look at us, right? So I hesitate to scream from the mountaintop that look at us, we're outperforming just about everybody, right? That's similar to us. When I know darn good well, we're still battling one another, right? And finding ways to disagree and do it in a respectful way, while also moving forward where we're all learning and we honor public education for what it's meant to be, which is our responsibilities to make sure that we produce young men and women, young people who then move on into the world and are productive, and they themselves thrive and can find meaning in the world. So these are big, big things. Meanwhile, I'm proud of the work we're doing, but it's messy work. The whole thing is messy because it's relational and it's fiscal and there's finite resources. And I'll be the first to tell you that class sizes do matter. More counseling is needed. A great curriculum and more PD is needed. And we should pay our people more so they could live here, right? I agree with all of that, but that's not what we're given. So we have to make the best of it. And so figuring out what our priorities are, figuring out how to do it in a kind, thoughtful, and inclusive way is the work before us. And so far, I think we're doing okay. I really do believe we're doing okay, but it's not easy, and I don't see it getting easier. I just see it. I see us being more and more reliant on ensuring we have positive and deep relationships with others despite those differences, and we just keep at it. We keep trying to get at it. Mark, or I'm sorry, Brian.
Well, no, I appreciate that answer. I think you said a couple things there. One is the reality is messy, which means it's complex. Test scores oversimplify many, many, many things. The challenge we have in the community appreciating the exceptional outcomes that we're creating is that it's complex. And so whether it's test scores or something else, finding a way, and you pointed out, people can't absorb complex messages, simple messages work. I still think that there's a case to be made for ensuring our community appreciates the exceptional nature of our school district. And it doesn't have to be through test scores and shouting about our test scores, but figuring out how to communicate that and ensure it's appreciated is really important, and is, I don't know how to solve that, but I think it's worth solving.
It's very similar to solving the exit strategy from slow high, the evacuation model from slow high, when there's construction going on all over town.
Long term.
But I do think measure D and C speaks volumes about how our community values and feels about its schools. I really, I feel deeply that I feel a sense of honor and respect for our communities that we serve, because I know passing those bonds is not easy. It's not easy on the homeowners. It's not easy on the community. There's a lot of interests out there, and they put us at the top. And I agree with you. I need to work probably in a more reflective way about how we can capture that message to our community. And I will keep at it. Our team's working really hard at figuring that one out. And I do think it is doable. It's just I'm gonna continue to keep massaging it. Okay. Yeah.
I've got Mrs. Hinton, followed by Mr. Banfield and Mr. Buckman.
I really appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. It's really creative. It's such a deep dive on imaginative ways to measure success, to give opportunities to the students for success. Now, in the area that I feel still needs to be brought out more, and I am hearing that it is, Mr. Dickinson was telling me about great speaking opportunities in the high school. He stopped me to tell me before he left. So I know it's going on already, but if you look at slide 4, and of course we know the state tests don't measure speaking because they're paper and pencil or computer, and they're not to speaking. Therefore, we have to make up for this in the class setting. Also, the colleges are putting less emphasis on the all these test results, or using other metrics and measures to admit students. So again, I feel like the emphasis needs to be brought out to have the children from early on have more means to support them in oral presentations, telling about themselves, making themselves known through their speech, because that's one of the things we also want to know about them, who each one individually is, so we can know their strong suits, their weak suits, and that will come out vocally more than I think it will other ways, obviously not in math class probably. So on slide 4, it says ELA is assessed reading, writing, listening, and research inquiry, but nowhere is it mentioned speaking. Well, I know it says it's a computerized test, but it used to be that you would see the 4 things together: reading, writing, listening, and speaking when I was teaching. And so I'm just seeing that we need to bring it back to a focus on the development of the child. They're going to learn better civil discourse through this. They're going to be more relational. It will break isolation down as they can communicate better with others. And so that's about And then they'll have better job interviews, better ability to use persuasion, and then empowerment. So that's why I'm beating this drum.
So as you're describing that, something that comes to mind as we focus on first best instruction and we talk about our evaluation tool working with our staff, Danielson framework. If you look through the rubric for the Danielson framework, distinguished talks specifically to a lot of the student ownership of the learning process, the students being able to articulate in class the responsibilities of the students being able to comment and compliment their peers' work and edit their work, define and refine the rubrics that are being asked of them. So that's on an aggregate scale and a macro scale. On a micro scale, at our secondary schools, we lean into poetry out loud. We have our students competing in poetry out loud and in all of our English classes, selecting a poem and then presenting that poem. And it may not be the most pleasurable experience for every single student, but it is a essential experience for every single student to get up in front of their class and to recite a poem. And it's really difficult, but it's a skill. And that those transference of skills is important. And then finally, our work with Dr. McDowell, when we talk about surface deep and transfer, we're talking about application of skills. When you think about our elementary I Innovate, and we're having students in our elementary grades lead presentations and being responsible for spaces on their elementary campuses. And then as we build that into our middle schools, we see that on a state assessment, they're not asking the speaking portion, but in our classrooms on a daily basis, we need to lean into that. But thank you.
Right. And I know the Student Senate is a great place for the student leaders to develop that. I mean, they are really handy with a microphone in that Student Senate. And but all means all.
Yeah.
So we need to have everybody be the quiet ones. Having been a bilingual teacher, when I taught, I know that when it's hard when you're learning a new language, you're going to have a silent period when you're just absorbing before you can speak. But they will have to be learning that in order to have their jobs and their businesses. They're going to have to know that. So I think we should start early in the early grades and really attack that area now.
Earlier this evening, how wonderful was it when Mr. Unger asked the question of the student from C.L. Smith to describe what they've learned in Leader and Me, and off the cuff, ad-libbing responded. And honestly, from a measurement of success of our district, I mean, I would have said, hey, maybe we could be done with the board meeting after she finished speaking, because that was a pretty good measurement of success right there.
That's right. For that one, it is. That's true. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Banfield and Mr. Buckman.
First a thought and then a question. Is it possible to be in a modality of productive disagreement?
Productive disagreement. Oh, that's an interesting thing.
Is that an oxymoron?
Possible.
Dr. Prater?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it requires the ability to listen, have empathy. It requires skill and training.
That's what I kind of gathered from what you were going on about, that we're not quite there yet because we're holding on to our own.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a really good insight. Yes.
Yeah. Question regarding the I Innovate labs. Now, I believe the thought was expressed that perhaps a way to improve our district's performance in 5th grade science and then on can be using the I Innovate lab as kind of a tool to do that. We may not have time to even discuss this tonight, but I would be interested in exploring how that might be.
I think it's a great question, and it dovetails well into what we do in our science class and our science curriculum, because it's really about the hands-on experiential opportunities for students when they're really digging into science and science concepts. Probably from our memory of what science might have looked at many years ago, rarely did we get our hands dirty. We a lot of times flicked the page and had to memorize a lot of information. Today, I think that works well with our elementary I Innovate to really practice and to break things and put them back together again and be good with that.
Mr. Buckman.
Thanks. So kudos. As we get to this agenda item and we get to this discussion that's been going on the board, this term nesting that came up earlier, and this seems to be like the egg hatching in the nest. I don't know how to quite phrase that, but it really speaks a lot to it, because we actually see the accountability to what we were doing. And also, I just want to also talk about, well, there was an article not too long ago in Cal Matters that math in California was like worse than anywhere else in the country. And I think when I talked to Dr. Prater, he said, no, I'll guarantee you that we're doing. And so I want to, here we are, and we're doing better. The other thing I just want to talk to is also Mr. Clausen's comments about how do we talk about this, and it's, I don't think there's any better sign of that you're doing well if than somebody coming around and saying, hey, can you show me why you're doing so well? And that doesn't involve comparing us to the local districts. It's just like that's, so A, that's great that people are coming, and B, I think we could sing that one all day long.
The word is out.
The word is out. You already got, well,
No, that's.
yeah. I mean, when the rest of the state's coming to San Luis Coastal and saying, how did you do it? That's pretty good kudos to everybody on the staff and all the staff that supports the staff and all the staff that support those people. So thanks.
Yeah, that's what I meant. The word is out. People are coming to see us.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to go to the public. This is not an action item, but if anyone has a comment, we'd be happy to hear it. Any of the three people in the room? Anyone? All right. Anyone online, Mr. Dawson? All right. All right. Thank you. We will move on to item 10.03. Mr. Block is approaching the podium. I also want to thank his crew who have been waiting patiently on Zoom for this item. So you have not gone unnoticed. So thank you for hanging in there with us. Mr. Block, this is the approved classification and compensation study recommendations.
Yes, thank you. Give you a little background on how we got here tonight. As you guys are well aware, we have a personnel commission. And the duties of the personnel commission include establishing and maintaining a classification plan, which includes creating job descriptions, setting minimum qualifications, and allotting classifications to salary ranges using standards that provide equal pay for equal work. Now, the next step in how we got here, Beth Summers, longtime human resources analyst, very experienced. When she was getting ready to retire, she strongly recommended and twisted many arms for us to complete this study, just feeling like this is something with the last years of pandemic and just the overwhelmed of the HR world that she didn't get to some of this work. So a recommendation is that we take a comprehensive look so that we can inform future decisions. And that was the start of this. Rachel Robinson Vang, who's on Zoom today, has spent an enormous amount of time on this. Even though we hired EMS to lead this, the work of HR department, but particular Rachel, has been enormous lift over the past year. EMS was contracted in October 2022. There was 30 focus groups comprised of employees and supervisors with several layers of review of job descriptions over the last year. EMS compared us to 12 comparable districts. We set a bar as San Luis Coastal prides ourselves in paying our employees well and being competitive as we go to hire employees. We set the bar at a 70th percentile. 87 positions were reviewed. 52 positions were in 5%, 20 of that 70th percentile. 23 positions were at 5% above market, and 12 out of all of our positions were below that marker. So that's where we started our work. And then Rachel compared our that data of EMS to our surrounding districts. We took 3 districts that are similar to us in Paso, Lucia Mar, and Santa Maria. And so between those 2 metrics, there was the data, and all these decisions were based on the data of which positions we should be looking at. In addition to those 12, we also had 9, and I'm going to have Ryan put up a couple charts for you to take a look at. He's going to first put up the EMS chart that shows the work that they did. And it's an easy to read chart. Green shows we're above that 70th percentile, with red showing that we're below. I can't read that, but as you guys are looking at that chart, you can see the 12 there, that we're looking at both the starting range and the 5-year. A thing I will point out for San Luis Obispo, very few districts have the number of ranges that we have. Many have longevity bonuses or increases, but very few districts have the number of steps that we have. So we compared nonetheless to the starting and then step 5. Of this year, so a year after it started, we met in closed session on October 17th with the Personnel Commission. The Personnel Commission, we reviewed all the data, put our heads together on a plan moving forward, consulted with the cabinet as well. And then October 25th, our PC Commission approved the 21 recommended position changes and then salary ranges as well. So with that all said, all of these changes with these 21 would affect 211 classified employees in total. These changes would make us competitive with surrounding districts. And I'm going to have Mr. Pinkerton go to the next slide there, just as an example. And I do want to point out, this is the CSEA salary schedule. We have put this together. We have caught a couple errors as people were looking on there. We're making those changes. Tonight, we're approving the range changes. This schedule will follow. We'll make sure we double check with our fiscal department as well. But if you can tell here, again, I'm going to look at my notes here, is for example, and it's not a huge change, but it gets us back within that 5% range. A para 1 was range 213, starting at $19.38 an hour. And we moved that para 1 to range 216, which would be $20.88 an hour as a starting range. Paras in particular is a huge need for us. We use contracted paras in our district because we can't hire enough. We also, through the PC Commission, can start them at an accelerated hiring rate when we can't fill positions. So we hope by doing this, we attract more, and the net savings from this would be significant over time as well. So our Personnel Commission approved these items, but these items do come at a cost. So that's why we're in front of you tonight, because in total, as we look through here, I will point out here for a minute as well, back to that second one, Mr. Pinkerton, is that internal equity is, as you look there, and I'm going to get a little closer here for a second, you see that paraeducator 1 is moving down a couple levels. That gets real close to para 2. It was actually para 2 that we were looking at that was below market. Just to create that internal equity, we kept that range very similar. So that's why several of those classifications changed. Other of those positions, when we dove into the job descriptions, other changes were recommended as we did that work in uncovering what those employees were actually doing, so that their range was accelerated as well. So with all that told, food service is a little different. They have a different budget. So not out of general funds, the amount that would come out of our food service budget for these changes is approximately $77,000. And out of general funds for all those other positions would be about $470,000. So it does come at a significant cost. I would say we routinely look at people's job descriptions, like I read in the beginning, but it's one person. It doesn't come at this extreme cost like we're coming with you today. This is outside of negotiations, But we, as a goodwill, we've been meeting with our unions. We've talked with them about these proposed changes, and we want our employees to be compensated where we think they belong. So that's why we bring this to you today to approve the recommendations that have been previously approved by our Personnel Commission in San Luis Coastal.
For the board to know, each range, when you look at the range, like 211 to 212 is 2.5% increase. So as you go down the ranges, that's what each one represents.
Thank you. This is an action item. I'm going to go to the public first. Is there anyone present who has a comment or question? Seeing no one, is there anyone present? Mrs. Roger, I'll come to you. I've got you on my list. Is there anyone? I do have some written comments that I'll read, but I wanted to see if there's anyone online on Zoom who wishes to speak. Ms. Dawson? Right, then I'm going to read. We did receive some written comments about this with this agenda item that I will now read. The first one, my name is Erin Roberts. I work as an occupational therapist for the district. Today, the OT group learned about agenda item 10.03, approval of the classification and compensation study. We are grateful to learn that our group is one of the positions that will receive reclassification and subsequent compensation increase. However, after reviewing the proposed salary schedule change, I have a few concerns. 1, the proposed salary schedule offers step 1, a $2.30 hourly rate increase, and step 19, an $8.63 hourly rate increase. Step 1 received a 4.9% increase, and step 19 received an 11.9% increase. If the proposed salary schedule is based on the updated job description and responsibilities, why the discrepancy in raises between step 1 and step 19? 2, in my opinion, everyone in the group should receive the same percentage increase, as the reason for the increase is based on the updated job description. An OT in step 19 does not have any additional responsibilities than an OT in step 1. Why did step 19 receive an additional 7% increase? My understanding as a participant in the focus group for the study was that it was based on a review of the position and responsibilities, not tenure. 3, I would like to request further review and discussion regarding the proposed salary schedule for the occupational therapists. Next, written comment. My name is Louisa Giles. I work as an occupational therapist for the district. Today, the OT group learned about agenda item 10.03, approval of the classification and compensation study. I am thankful to learn about the salary increase. I am on step 7 and received a 4.5% increase. An OT on step 19 received an 11.9% increase. We have equal responsibilities. Is it possible for everyone in the group to receive a more similar percentage increase? The discrepancy does not seem very fair. I would appreciate further review and discussion regarding the proposed salary schedule for occupational therapists. Next, my name is Stephanie Teague, and I am an occupational therapist for SLCUSD. Today, our team learned about agenda item 10.03, approval of the classification and compensation study. We are grateful to learn that our group is one of the positions that will receive reclassification and subsequent compensation increase. However, after reviewing the proposed salary schedule change, we have a few questions and concerns. The proposed salary schedule offers step 1, a $2.30 hourly rate increase, and step 19, an $8.63 hourly rate increase. Step 1 received a 4.9% increase, and step 19 received an 11.9% increase. If the proposed salary change is based on the updated job description and responsibilities, why the discrepancy in raises between step 1 and step 19? An equal percentage increase is more reasonable since there is no difference in job duties, responsibilities in a step 1 OT and a step 19 OT. Thank you for your time and consideration. That's all the written comments I have. I will now,
Maybe just a minute of clarification. And Mr. Pinkerton's anxious to ring in as well. Over time, raises in our schedule are not incredibly square, meaning 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. Sometimes negotiations happen for certain things where this is built over time. So we do continue that same range as we go down. Unfortunately, we are going to equal that out. Rachel's here and she could give you the exact numbers. The last step, that was the error that I referenced. It was out of that exceptional one. The bad news is that step 19 is not going to get that percentage of raise. It will be more equal. It's not going to be identical, but it will be a lot more even than what it was originally. And on your packet or on the online, it's been updated.
So basically it's wrong. The proposed CSEA salary schedule is wrong the way it's on the board agenda tonight.
But it's been revised
for OT. So it's going to have to be changed. So it'll be changed to reflect it, right? So again, for the OTs in particular, for these three, so I can see why there was confusion. They're going to move up two ranges, right? That's what we're asking the board to approve tonight. So from range 248 to 250, each range is 2.5%. So basically the step 1 was 4601. Now the step 2, range 250, step 1 will be 48.31, a 5% increase because they're moving up 2 ranges. And the way the CSEA salary schedule is set up, the first 4 steps are 5% increases. So those first 4 steps, so step 1 to 2 is 5%, step 2 to 3, 5%, step 3 to 4, 5%. And then the rest of the steps are 2% all the way to step 18. And then we had negotiated kind of a nice people who veteran 18 to 19 is actually a 3% increase. So it's that's why it's a little weird across the board when you look at it. And those were all negotiated, in terms of those over the course of the years. Higher steps for those people that are making less money was kind of the thinking, right? In negotiations, that's why we have the first 4. Then it's 2%, which is reflective of SEIU, our teachers union, 2%, those types of things. Just for the board to know. So we'll double check, triple check, make sure that those amounts are correct in each cell as we go through this process.
thank you. All right, from the board, I have Mr. Buckman, followed by Mrs. Roger, followed by Mr. Unger.
My comment was going to be about, and I think I'll keep it to that, the $400,000 that we're being asked to look at. I needed to put that into some perspective in my mind. And so I went and said, well, okay, but what does it cost for us to contract a para? How much more expensive is that than to hire somebody that's local? And is it fairly expensive? Okay, so that was one way I was looking at this. The other thing was the cost to advertise for a position like this. If I'm reading it correctly, what I've talked to Dan, it's gone up to advertise because we're not finding the people locally that are, sort of jumping in and saying, I want that job.
Yeah, we have increased our budgeting and the tools and all the online, like Indeed, and we've got a lot of our staff's time focused on that. You're absolutely correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Hey, Mrs. Roger.
Well, a lot's been said since I raised my hand. So what I intended to say when my hand went up was for the benefit of our newer board members or members of the public. Mr. Block, could you just explain very briefly the composition of the Personnel Commission and why it is incumbent upon us to listen to them?
That's great. One is appointed by the board. One is appointed by the unions, and then those 2 appoint the third or select the third. So that's how it works. And they don't have they're neutral and they're really for very little compensation, just trying to serve our district. So again, kudos to our three commissioners. They've been outstanding through this process. We've had some long meetings digesting a whole lot of data with them. Thank you for that, Meryl. Mrs. Roberts.
Thank you.
Mr. Unger.
Yeah, and I would add that Personnel Commission is essentially our version of, and I just lost it. That what the federal government has. Oh, what's it called? I'm so losing it right now. What? It's not general. It's yeah. But basically, what the purpose of the Personnel Commission is to make sure that that the salaries are that classified employees are hired fairly and squarely, and to take the politicization of their hiring out of the hiring process. And historically, it goes back to the 30s, where they were political positions, and the personnel commissions have taken that out of the mix, hopefully. So that's where they come from. But that wasn't my question. My question for you is, if we approve this as is with the errors, how do we correct the errors, and does that come back to us for another vote? So what's the process on this?
So what I would suggest is that we're just approving the ranges on there. The reason that the occupational therapist was out is we occupational therapists are at our highest. They were at 248.
Right.
We're now bumping that out to 250. The other is employees that we did, most of them. I think we created one range in the middle. Rachel, I'm looking at you. But the rest of them went to a range that was already established. So this one was new. We will make sure it matches, Mr. Unger, as Ryan was talking, Mr. Pinkerton, we'll make sure that it fits what has been done previously, and that as the ranges go down, that the percent matches.
So this won't need to come back to us.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? This, oh, there you go.
Service.
This is an action item. I'm going to make a suggestion that when the motion is made, it include language that we're approving the ranges as presented. So just so that we're really clear with the public and everyone involved in this. So who wants to make a motion? Mr. Unger.
I move approval of item 10.03 with the understanding that we're approving the ranges of the salary schedule.
And I'll second.
And it's the Civil Service Commission, by the way.
You were thinking of. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Unger and a second by Mrs. Roger. Mr. Unger.
Yes.
Mrs. Roger.
Yes.
Mr. Banfield.
Yes.
Mr. Buckman.
Yes.
Mr. Clausen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton.
Yes.
And I am a yes. And again, thank you, personnel people, for all your work. This is a large undertaking, and we thank you for that. All right. 10.04. Award of a leaseback for Del Mar Phase 1.
Yeah, so Del Mar Phase 1 leaseback contract came back, and Wysong Construction Company was the highest score value. I'm sharing that right now. So again, there's for the board to remember, there are two sections. So one is qualifications, the other is actual fee proposal, each worth half, 50% of the overall score. In this case, for Del Mar Elementary School, again, Wysong Construction Company, who did much of our work through Measure D at both San Luis Obispo High School, Morro Bay High School, local contractor, came in at a fee proposal of 10.19. So an excellent fee for us to move forward with. And again, they had the highest score based on those rankings, the best value score. And so we are asking the board tonight to approve moving forward with a leaseback agreement with Wysong Construction for Del Mar Elementary School.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the public. You hear my voice echoing in this cavernous room. People are leaving. Mrs. Gould, you have any comments or questions about it? No, she says. All right. Anyone online? Ms. Dawson says no. All right. Any board discussion on this item? I see Mrs. Hinton and Mr. Banfield.
Well, is it necessary to have a different construction entity like Wysong on one and Acme on the other? Is it necessary? How did their scores differ between the two projects that Acme got one and Wysong the other?
Yeah, so really it comes down to that scoring matrix, right? So what we're finding is most of these companies that are putting in bids are all qualified. They're education contracts, they do a lot of education schooling, so it really comes down to fee. So in this case, Wysong Construction had the lowest fee, got the most points for Del Mar. For the next board item, Acme Construction had the lowest fee. And so they ended up winning the overall best value.
That's
score.
right. Now I remember you said
Yeah.
that's the single most important quality.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure.
Mr. Banfield.
It's just gonna make an approval.
Oh, would you like to, if there's no other board discussion, Mr. Banfield, would you like to make a motion?
I move that we approve measure 10.04.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Banfield and a second by Mrs. Hinton. Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. We are so unanimous. All right, 10.05. This is the award for Monarch Grove Phase 1.
Yeah, so in this case, again, we had 4 contractors, so less than we had in many of our others. But again, we had Acme, RSH, Mano Construction, and Newton Construction qualified based on the projects. You can see the points there. Again, fee. In this case, Acme Construction had the same fee as Newton, so they had the same, both received those points. But because of the higher qualifications in the other section, which really in this case came down to the number of projects they had completed at that dollar value in the past 3 years. So that was kind of the points difference between them and Newton. And so based on that best value scoring, Acme Construction had 200 points. Newton was at 191. So we're bringing forward Acme Construction tonight for hopeful approval for the lease leaseback contract at Monarch Grove Elementary School.
There is now no one in this room, so I will just go to Ms. Dawson to see if there's anyone from the public wishing. Okay. I have a quick question, which is it, and then Mr. Clausen. We're dropping like flies. Where is Newton out of?
They're local contractors.
Oh, they are local.
So yeah, they have an office in San Luis Obispo.
Okay, well, who knew? Then anyone else from the board with a question or comment or wishing to make a motion?
I would love to make a motion that we approve 10.05.
I would love to second that.
Thank you.
So we have it's only at the end of the night that I do these things. We have a motion by Mr. Clausen, a second by Ellen Sheffer. Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Unger.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go forth and construct something. All right, we will move on to our action consent agenda. 11, please let me know if you'd like to pull something. 11.01, approval of certificated and classified personnel items. 11.02, certification to the Board of Education temporary athletic coaches for the 2023-24 fall sports season. 11.03, approval of field study trip requests. 11.04, approval of furniture and equipment request. 11.05, approval of minutes, September 19, 2023. 11.06, approval of minutes, October 3, 2023. 11.07, approval of minutes, October 17, 2023. 11.08, approval of purchase orders and Cal card purchases.
I move approval of items 11.01 to 11.08.
I'll second that one too. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Unger, a second by me. Mr. Unger,
Yes.
yes. Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, anything for advance agenda? All right, reports by board members. I see Mr. Unger, Mr. Buckman,
And myself.
and Mrs. Roger. Mr. Unger.
Well, I just wanted to say that I visited Bishop's Peak. I appreciate Miss Jones taking me around. It was, I believe, the day before Halloween. And instead of wearing Halloween costumes, what was wonderful is they were wearing their favorite book characters. And so Mrs. Jones was what was it? Herman the hamster or somebody like that, you know, it was great. So there were several Harry Potters. And then one of the teachers was Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. It was the most wonderful costume. I want to thank Mrs. Shepherd for meeting me at CL Smith and talking about the science of reading and what the plans are for the English language arts adoption. And then we were able to visit Mrs. Pierce's second grade class, as well as the book fair. I thought that was quite interesting. One thing that to sort of Mrs. Hinton, what you were talking about is she was having the students review the writing work with each other. She had given them a rubric, and then they were reviewing the rubric themselves and then talking with their neighbors about what they feel that the improvements they could be making in their written language. It was
We used to
quite
teach
wonderful to
that
see
way.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
And then, of course, there was the Baywood Day of the Dead, which was really a wonderful experience. So thank you.
Mr. Buckman and Mrs. Roger.
First of all, I want to Mr. Pinkerton's comments on the economic forecast. I have to say, as a board member, that it is really important to have that information and helps me make my decisions. I didn't want to pull this out of the consent, but one of the items where we're talking about the bills and we get to see what the district's doing, and I went going down, there was a $159 million item, and it caught my eye. So I went over across the column to see what was costing us $159 million. And it was something from Stake Partners, which even piqued my interest even more. So I went online and put in Stake Partners, and I figured, okay, so this is where we're getting our beef for the kids. Yeah, right now, it's where we get our chicken. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. I have no idea why you would name a chicken company Stake Partners, but whatever. Okay, that's my report. Thanks.
Hey, Mrs. Roger, then Mr. Clausen.
Okay, thank you. I don't typically make a board report, but I'm gonna ask for a point of personal privilege here, and we don't have anyone left in the room, so I guess really, in a sense, I'm just speaking to all of you. I debated whether or not I wanted to make these comments, but I think that I do. I have not been able to attend board meetings in person since January. I've had some very significant health issues that I believe I have surmounted now. I'm coming out the other side of. So I have kept up with my board responsibilities in terms of Zooming the meetings and what have you. I haven't been able to get to school sites or attend athletic events or, plays or any of the things that kind of make our job fun. But I believe that this is our last board meeting of November. We will have a study session, and our next board meeting will be December 5th. So I really appreciate, well, let me say that in a moment. December 5th, if everything goes according to plan and my doctors are, on board with it, I plan to emerge from my chrysalis, and whether it be as a butterfly or a moth, I will attend the meeting in person on December 5th and thereafter going forward. But I want to really thank my board colleagues for their support and kindness and love and forbearance over this period. It really means a lot to me. I'm very appreciative. And I have been surrounded by love and prayer throughout the whole thing. And I'm really grateful that I'm going to be able to come and be with you in person again in December. So that's my personal board report. And thank you for allowing me to make it.
We love you, Marilyn. We're looking forward to seeing you. All right, Mr. Clausen, followed by Mrs. Hinton.
I was going to say that I attended the Slow High performance of Noises Off, which was a drama performance, and it was another fabulous production by the Slow High School Theater Company.
Thank you. Mrs. Hinton.
Well, as a matter of fact, I attended that production as
Was it
well.
fabulous?
And it was my first because I actually had a date this time, and it was my husband. So I enjoyed it, and the set was fabulous. They made it themselves. They took on a Noel Coward type of British comedy, which usually isn't funny. So they were really daring to do that and really pulled it off immaculately. So, I mean, there's like all these different interruptions of each other, and there's not like necessarily a through line like there is for most dramas, theater productions. So they really held the audience attention, and the kids were laughing and getting the jokes through that thick British accent that they mustered up. It was amazing. It was very believable that we were in England.
All right, I'm going to briefly state that I attended a boardwalk with Diana Jones at Bishop's Peak, and half the school was on a field trip. They had walked over to Cal Poly to attend a women's basketball game and have a tour of the campus, which was a great outing for them. But I did attend Mrs. McLeod's class and watch children learning arithmetic, which was very fun in their mirror numbers and trying to figure out how to do all this. And the enthusiasm of these elementary teachers always just blows me away. How they can keep that up for several hours every day is just beyond me. But I also visited Mrs. Long's class where she was using the science of reading, and it was just, I could have sat in, as I told Dr. Prater, I could have sat, I just wanted to pull up one of those tiny little chairs and sit there all day. She was so engaging and successful. The kids were captivated. I know that this is a tough go to ask our teachers to take on a new method of teaching reading, using the science of reading, and she was doing a remarkable and admirable job with these students, and I very much appreciated it and was if this is what we've got to look forward to with our students, it's great stuff. So that's it from me. Looks like we're all packing up and ready to go. So thank you, everyone. See you at the study session. Thanks very much.